Chapter 4609. When Chu waved her hand and said, "Don't make it hard on yourself. Call me master if you want. Daoist Xiao is like a brother to me. I won't blame you." "Hee, that's good, master." Gongshu Yisin giggled and said, "Sect master drew it from a different angle, so the color is much dimmer so I couldn't tell. Morning and night cliff? Is it very famous in Burial Immortal Continent?" Xiaohua didn't understand and looked at the excited Gongshu Yisin. Gongshu Yixian was like a proud little hen. She raised her head and said, "Of course. Even if 99% of us Confucian girls haven't been to Morning and Night Cliff, who doesn't know about it?" Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry and scolded. "I'm not a Confucian girl, of course I don't know. Master, you must know that Magpie Bridge immortal." Gongshu Yisin blushed. Outside the Fortune Dao Palace, Gusu Chiodi and the others flew over and obediently stood behind Gongshu Yisin. They heard Gongshu Yisin recite in a low voice, "The delicate clouds play tricks, the flying stars spread hatred, the silver rivers pass on in secret, golden wind and jade do meet, surpassing countless mortals, tender as water, auspicious days like a dream, enduring the Magpie Bridge to return home. If two people love each other for a long time, why would they be together day and night?" Hiss. Xiaohua suddenly thought of something and his eyes lit up. "Yisin, you're talking about tender as water sword?" "Not bad, not bad. Master is great. I didn't think you would know about the #1 imperial artifact of Confucian." Gongshu Yisin couldn't help but clap and laugh. Xiaohua covered his mouth and laughed, thinking to himself, "Fortunately, Fu Jiwen was sent to star-plucking tower by this old man. Otherwise, he would have exposed this old man's shortcomings. This is what he told me back at Jai Xinglu." Cough, cough. Xiaohua coughed. "Of course I know about the 10 great imperial artifacts." While speaking, Xiaohua had already told Wen Chu the story of the 10 great imperial equipment. Wen Chu asked, "What does Morning and Night Cliff have to do with the #1 imperial artifact, tender as water sword?" "Of course it's related, master, and it's very related." Gongshu Yisin blinked her big eyes, as if she didn't understand Wen Chu's words. Her eyes were filled with grievance. "Master, don't you know that Li Hua Fairy fell into the Milky Way and died at the Day and Night Cliff? That's strange." Wen Chu didn't understand. Pear Blossom Immortal Palace. Didn't she kill 100,000 celestial soldiers at Southern Heavenly Gate before she was killed by the Star River Water Sword Empress? Why did she die at Morning and Night Cliff? Also, I've been here for so many years palace for many years. How could the Immortal Palace have records of something that would damage the Immortal Palace's reputation? Gongshu Yisin explained. Moreover, although Li Hua Fairy destroyed the immortal weapon in the Immortal Palace, she was still no match for Celestial Empress. After luring out the heartless man, Celestial Empress used the Star River to separate them. Li Hua Fairy was so angry that she cut off the Star River, causing the tender-feeling sword to turn into a star and leave. She then followed the heartless man to escape to the end of the Star River. In the end, the Star River flowed endlessly and separated her from the heartless man. That heartless man even broke his heart and abandoned Li Hua Fairy by the Star River, causing Li Hua Fairy's heart to die, and she fell into the Star River and died. "Forget it." Xiaohua smiled. "There's no need to talk too much about ancient stories. Tell me where Morning and Night Cliff is." "Master, this isn't some ancient story." Gongshu Yisin defended herself. Looking at Xiaohua's uninterested expression, she curled her lips and said, "You male cultivators really don't understand romance at all." "Yisin," Gongshu Yiming reminded in a low voice, "how can you speak to First Elder Sect Master like that?" Gongshu Yisin came to her senses and hurriedly said respectfully, "First Elder Sect Master, Morning and Night Cliff is in Qing Province. However, where the Star River fell, the mountains within thousands of miles collapsed and the weather changed greatly. Only Morning and Night Cliff stood there alone like a heartless pear blossom fairy. First Elder Sect Master." Seeing Gongshu Yisin sad again, Gusu Chiodi hurriedly interrupted. "Senior brother Xian Songzi seems to be from Qing Province. He definitely knows where Morning and Night Cliff is." "Enough." When Chu waved his hand, "You can leave now. I won't bring you there this time. Let Xian Songzi come over." Yes, second elder sect master. Gusu Chiodi agreed without hesitation. Gongshu Isin wanted to fight for this opportunity, so she said in a low voice, Sect master, this old man has important matters to attend to this time. Xiao Hua glared at her and said, even if you call the 11th elder sect master, I won't bring you there. 11th elder sect master? Gongshu Isin was stunned, then nodded sadly and followed Gejori out. Isin is only in the Gongshu family. Xiao Hua smiled. If she was in any other small family, she would have been schemed against. Aren't you in my fortune gate now? When Chu smiled, this old man likes such a pure disciple. But it's strange, when you brought Gongshu Isin to the Star Moon Palace, that Gongshu Jingyi didn't say a word. When Gongshu Isin entered my fortune gate, the Gongshu family's patriarch also didn't say anything. She is the Gongshu family's most important array master. This is where the Gongshu family's brilliance lies. Xiaohua smiled. Gongshu Isin benefits from this, and it all belongs to the Gongshu family. The Gongshu family knows that Isin won't forget about her sect. However, if something happens to the fortune gate, and Gongshu Isin doesn't report it to the patriarch, then she will have nothing to do with the Gongshu family. Understood. When Chu smiled, it's no wonder that when this old man went to the Gusu family to propose marriage, the Gusu family only opened their doors after an incense stick's worth of time. I'm afraid they have been discussing inside. That should be the case. Xiao Hua nodded. Nowadays, every action of a family's disciple has to consider the family's benefits. Speaking of this, Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat as he thought of a person from a long time ago. Kai Zhuoxia. Wasn't Kai Zhuoxia a pitiful girl who sacrificed her life for her family's benefits? I wonder how she and him are doing now. Xiao Hua thought of Li Zongbao for no reason. When he thought of Li Zongbao and Kai Zhuoxia, Xiao Hua couldn't help but think of Fairy Hong Xia. Damn it, if she knew that I attacked the immortal palace for another girl, would she jump into a vat of vinegar? Not long after, Xin Songzi arrived at the Fortune Dao Palace. When he heard that Xiao Hua wanted to go to the Dawn and Dawn Cliff, Xin Songzi thought for a moment and said, Sect Master, although the Dawn and Dawn Cliff is famous, not many cultivators have been there. Not only is the origin energy there chaotic, but the space there is also very strange. Anyone who approaches the Dawn and Dawn Cliff will feel a heavy pressure, slowing down their flying speed. Even nascent soul realm cultivators can't teleport there. What's more special is that the weather there is constantly changing, and there are 4 seasons in a day. Of course, with Sect Master's methods, this trip won't be a problem. As long as you know where it is. Xiao Hua smiled. Pass down this old man's order. Gather 300,000 Fortune Gate soldiers and follow this old man to the Dawn and Dawn Cliff. Yes, this disciple obeys. Xian Songzi didn't dare to delay and hurried out to pass down the order. When Chu smiled, why is fellow Daoist gathering so many soldiers? Are you guarding against Immortal Emperor Go Qin's scheme? As I know, Immortal Emperor Go Qin's scheme is possible, but not likely. Xiao Hua explained, I am preparing for a rainy day to prevent encountering the Nangong family. Since I was able to find out that Princess Xian was suppressed at the Dawn and Dawn Cliff, the Nangong family's Nangong Tianjia would naturally know. But then, Xiao Hua frowned and said, that's not right. What if Immortal Emperor Go Qin's scheme isn't the Dawn and Dawn Cliff, but the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range? I will take all the disciples with me, and if he sends his troops to suppress us, it will be troublesome. Even if Immortal Emperor Go Qian doesn't come, what if the 4 great families come? Leave Tianren and Enlightened Master Yun behind. When Chu smiled, leave behind a portion of the disciples and an army of 100,000. Let's see who dares to suppress the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. Deal. Xiao Hua nodded and invited Tianren and Enlightened Master Yun out. After explaining, Enlightened Master Yun smiled and said, I alone is enough to guard the mountain. There's no point in having another friend Tianren. You might as well bring friend Tianren with you. If Immortal Emperor Go Qian has other thoughts and sees friend Tianren, he will think that there is no one guarding our fortune gate. He will definitely send an order to attack the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. At that time, I will be here to destroy the immortal weapon and give the immortal palace a head-on blow. Xiao Hua pondered for a moment, and felt that it was reasonable. After all, enlightened Master Yun's strength surpassed Tianren and himself, and the Pango axe was an invincible divine weapon in the 3 continents. With enlightened Master Yun guarding the soaring Dragon Mountain range, he would definitely be able to hold back 10,000 enemies. Xiao Hua kept Tianren into his space and flew out of the Fortune Dao Palace, leaving behind an army of 100,000 and 200,000 disciples. Then, Xiao Hua only brought along Yuanya, Wang Bianfei, and the other disciples, and Xin Songzi to lead the way, and flew out of the soaring Dragon Mountain range. However, before Xiao Hua could fly 100 miles, he saw a transmission talisman flying out from the soaring Dragon Mountain range and landing in front of him. Xiao Hua received it and scanned it with his divine sense. Surprise appeared on his face as Wen Chu asked curiously, "Fellow Taoist, is there any new news?" "This is a message from Zhai Xinglu." Xiao Hua passed the transmission talisman to Wen Chu and said, "Lao Ai and Fu Jiwen have taken over Zhai Xinglu. There is no special news about the Nangong family during this period of time. However, there is a shocking news. The sutra seeking extreme bliss is about to end. Chunzong and his 4 disciples have already entered Yu province when Lao Ai sent the message. I'm afraid it won't be long before they arrive at the longevity town. Thunder temples Mavarakana revered Buddha, exquisite temples Maitreya revered Buddha, immortal palaces immortal Emperor Go Qian, Taibai Jinxing, and Thousand Demons sacred territories Golden-winged Great Peng are also heading to the longevity town to observe the ceremony. To welcome the end of this grand event, and to consecrate the hidden immortal continent's first golden Buddha statue. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 46:10. After reading it, Wen Chu gave the communication talisman to Xiao Hua and shook his head. I'm afraid we have no fate to see such a grand scene. Let's hurry to Chaomuya. Xiao Hua crushed the communication talisman and shook the Kunlun mirror again, taking Wen Chu and the other disciples into the space. Then, he swept Xin Songzi with his sleeve and teleported towards Chaomuya. The soaring Dragon Mountain range was in the Yu province, and Yu province was also connected to Qing province. Therefore, it was not too far to go from the soaring Dragon Mountain range to Qing province. However, after teleporting for 10,000 li, Xiao Hua's figure slowed down again, because at this time, all the cauldrons under the 9 provinces of the hidden immortal continent had been taken by Xiao Hua. Without the 9 regions' cauldrons to suppress the destiny, the entire 9 regions of the hidden immortal continent was plagued by disasters. Although Xiao Hua had previously sent out a large number of good seeds, and these good seeds had spread throughout the hidden immortal continent for hundreds of years, which played an extremely important role in preventing the intensification of disasters. However, the fine seeds were only a temporary solution. As long as the cauldrons were not returned to their original places, the 9 provinces would not be peaceful. Xiao Hua flew for 10,000 li and saw a lot of suffering, and his heart felt heavy. Actually, when Xiao Hua went to the Immortal Palace to ask Immortal Emperor Go Qian, he had another plan. That was, if Immortal Emperor Go Qian happily told him where the new princess was imprisoned, Xiao Hua would directly rescue the new princess and then bring the cauldrons to the Immortal Palace to propose marriage. The cauldrons would be the betrothal gift. Of course, the cauldrons were the national weapons of Confucian cultivators, so Xiao Hua could not directly tell Bin. Unfortunately, Immortal Emperor Go Qian was completely stubborn and did not even say a single word, so Xiao Hua did not even have the chance to mention the cauldrons. In particular, Kong Hongwu, who stole the cauldrons, was killed by Xiao Hua, and Xie Xian, who coveted the cauldrons, was also killed by Immortal Emperor Go Qian. Now, on the hidden immortal continent, no one knew that the cauldrons were in Xiao Hua's hands. No one even knew if the cauldrons were still in their original places. Of course, Xiao Hua also used the cauldrons to deal with the heavenly demon in the ruins, but Xiao Hua believed that even if Sun Jian saw it, he would not think that it was the cauldrons. Forget it. Xiao Hua couldn't bear it in his heart and secretly made a decision, after rescuing Xian, whether Immortal Emperor Go Qian agrees or not, This Xiao will have to use the 9 prefectures cauldrons to set up the 9 prefectures great array. Otherwise, the people of the hidden immortal continent will eventually... However, when he thought up to here, Xiao Hua laughed bitterly. He also understood in his heart that setting up the 9-province grand formation required the 9 province formation diagrams. He didn't have the diagrams, so how could he set up the formation? If he wanted to bring the cauldrons back, he would have to find Immortal Emperor Go Chun and take out the 9 provinces formation from the Overcloud Palace. However, in order to let Immortal Emperor Go Chun know, he had to spend a lot of effort explaining the purpose of the cauldrons. However, a Taoist cultivator had taken the supreme national treasure of the Confucian cultivators. What did this mean? Just thinking about it gave Xiaohua a headache. There are some things that are impossible to explain even with 100 mouths. Xiaohua and the other Fortune Gate disciples had accumulated a lot of good seeds in Xiaohua space. In fact, the entire Xinhua continent's billions of people also relied on these good seeds to survive. After Xiaohua sent out a lot of good seeds from his space, he felt slightly relieved and continued on his way to the Azure province. After a day, he saw that the land below his feet was starting to become sparse. Xiaohua felt that the journey was about done. He stopped in midair and was about to call Xin Songzi out to ask for directions. However, at this time, he saw the clouds in the sky flickering. When Chu flew out from the space and said with a smile, "Fellow immortal Xiao," Xiaohua raised his eyebrows. He knew that Wen Chu had something important to say and was about to ask. Suddenly, Wen Chu was the first to stare blankly. Before he could finish his sentence, he looked strangely towards Xiaohua's right and muttered, "How strange. Why do I feel that this place is very familiar?" Seeing the astonishment on Wen Chu's face, Xiaohua also asked curiously, "I have never been here before. Could it be that fellow immortal has been here all these years?" No. Wen Chu shook his head and said, "I have never been here before. This is certain. However, I feel that there is a kind of aura in that place. This kind of aura to me seems to be from another world." Seems to be from another world? How is that possible? Xiaohua laughed first. How could fellow immortal have a previous life? Oh, fellow immortal, why did you suddenly come out? When Chu said absent-mindedly, "I suddenly thought of something. Fellow immortal, aren't you very familiar with the grandmasters of the 4 great clans in Star Moon Palace? Why don't we use them? Them?" Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "They are only grandmasters. They are not when saints nor when stars. I'm afraid that they have very little power to make suggestions about the sex affairs. Moreover, if they want to speak for I or secretly tell I about the sex affairs, they have to think about how long their lives are. Under such circumstances, even if they want to say something, I don't want to hear it." At this point, Xiaohua looked in front of his head and said, "I don't want to entangle myself with too many mundane matters with Xansa. Forget it." Wen Chu reluctantly turned his head back and said, "We'll go to Chaomuya first. After we save Xian, we'll go see if there's anything strange there." With that, Wen Chu was about to enter the dimension, but Xiaohua hurriedly stopped him and said, "Fellow immortal, you don't need to go back. You're Immortal Emperor Go Qin's personal assistant. Just stay outside and accompany I." Forget it. Wen Chu ignored him and waved his hand. "Isn't it just looking for Xian? You can go by yourself. This old man still needs to fuse with that wondrous item." With that, Wen Chu's figure actually disappeared. "AI, this group of people." Xiaohua sighed helplessly. "When it's time to use them, not a single one is here." Then, Xiaohua pulled Xin Songzi out of the dimension and asked about Chaomu Yu's location. When Xin Songzi saw it, he pointed at where Wen Chu was looking and said, "Master, that's Chaomu Yu. You flew in the wrong direction." What? Xiaohua was stunned and felt that it was a bit unbelievable. He looked at Xin Songzi and then to the right. "Are you sure?" "This disciple is sure." Xin Songzi nodded. "This disciple flew past here before." "Wait a moment." Xiaohua waved his Taoist robe and took out the Kunlun mirror. Then, he pointed at it, and under the pillar of light, Wen Chu was pulled out by Xiaohua with an impatient expression. "Fellow Taoist, is there anything else?" Wen Chu asked. Xiaohua also pointed in annoyance. Look carefully. The place you said was somewhat familiar is where Chaomuya is. Could it be that you were the pear blossom fairy in your previous life? At this point, Xiaohua smiled and asked Xinsongzi, That's right. Who's that noble from the immortal palace? Xinsongzi thought for a moment and said embarrassedly, Master, that's a beautiful legend passed down by Confucian female cultivators. How would this disciple know? Either way, his surname is Sun. Nonsense. This master also knows his surname is Sun. His surname can't be Xiao. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said, Perhaps your martial aunt Wen Chu is this Sun's reincarnation in this life. This time, Xin Songzi hurriedly said, Master, this? I don't think it's possible. It seems that this so-called number 1 imperial artifact didn't exist in the ancient times. It should have existed not long ago. Perhaps that noble is still living in the immortal palace. Ha ha, ha ha ha. Xiao Hua immediately clapped his hands and laughed. No need to say any more. No need to say any more. It must be that immortal Emperor Gaochen. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal at Chaomuya. Moreover, if it wasn't for him, why would the Empress keep such a close eye on him? Why would he insist on running to that flower medicine palace? Xin Songzi also smiled and said, This disciple doesn't know. Xiao Hua joked with Xin Songzi, but his divine sense scanned the surrounding 10,000 li to see if there were any traces of the Nangong family. Unfortunately, his joke of covering for her was in vain. There was no cultivator above the 6th level of essence force nearby. Wen Chu, after hearing Xiao Hua's words, looked at the distant horizon and narrowed her eyes. No one knew what she was thinking. Since they knew that Chaomuya was in front of them and no Nangong family disciples were coming over, Xiao Hua put Xin Songzi into his space and urged Wen Chu, Let's go. Wen Chu nodded and turned into a cloud as she rushed towards Chaomuya. They flew for another 4 hours, and the sky was covered in a layer of faint gray. This layer of gray was tens of thousands of li wide, and Xiao Hua already knew that this was Chaomuya. Xiao Hua stopped and turned to look at Wen Chu, whose eyes were flashing with 5 colors, and said in a low voice, Fellow immortal, we are still some distance away from Chaomuya, but the heaven-earth Yuan Qi and righteous Qi in the air have already become chaotic, and there are also traces of the power of the moon and stars. It seems that Chaomuya is not simple. Unexpectedly, Wen Chu didn't answer his question. That's right, it's here. This old man feels a kind of sorrow, a kind of helplessness, a kind of reluctance, a kind of parting. That's strange. Xiao Hua stroked his chin and said, Didn't fellow immortal not have so many feelings before? How come you've just merged with that wondrous item, and you've already undergone such a transformation? No. Wen Chu shook her head. These feelings are not mine. I know it very well. They're not yours. Xiao Hua was even more confused. If they're not yours, how do you know? This old man doesn't know either. Wen Chu was also confused. I'm afraid. We'll only know when we get there. All right. Xiao Hua urged his body to move. We'll go take a look. However, it's best to be careful. Although they were both Mahayana realm cultivators of the 3 continents, Xiao Hua and Wen Chu still had to be extra careful. They both used their divine abilities and slowly approached the gray layer. After flying for a while, not only were there some cracks in space that would occasionally sway, but they would quickly heal and tear apart. It was as if space was extremely unstable. However, when Xiao Hua's divine sense swept through the space, he could clearly see that this space seemed to be divided into several layers. The outermost layer was like a piece of cotton fluttering in the wind, extremely tattered, while the inner layer was tough and intact. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 46:11. In the beginning, although there were no traces of people on the ground below Xiao Hua and Wen Chu, the undulating mountain ridge and continuous forest were still somewhat lively. However, the closer they got to the light gray area, not only did the mountain ridge disappear, even the hills became increasingly low and disappeared, not to mention the forest. The entire ground began to have some bumpy undulations. These undulations were either dense or sparse. Looking from the sky, the entire ground actually looked like a sieve. The two people's figures gradually sank into the light gray area, but the space around them was not particularly different. It was just that there were more fragments in that space, and from time to time, the two people's bodies would explode. If it was an ordinary cultivator, it would naturally be difficult to resist. Perhaps they would not be injured, but no matter what, they would still have to use their divine abilities to resist. Xiao Hua and Wen Chu acted as if they did not see it. They still released their divine senses to explore the surroundings. Woo-woo. The wind was still whimpering, like a woman sobbing. Xiao Hua did not feel anything, but Wen Chu frowned and unexpectedly stopped. What's wrong? Although Xiao Hua really hoped that Wen Chu and the other clones had their own emotions, he was also afraid that their emotions would go astray. Seeing that Wen Chu suddenly had some reaction, his heart unconsciously tightened, and he asked in a low voice. Wen Chu covered her chest with a painful expression and replied, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, have you heard of this poem before? Old fragrant powder is like the past, love and hate cannot compare. A few lines of calligraphy in the spring, even more sparse in the autumn. The phoenix is cold, the pillow is lonely. The bowels of sorrow serve wine. Even if the soul of a dream is empty, how can it compare to the dream of no?" Xiao Hua was somewhat speechless, but he very carefully nodded and said, "Fellow Taoist, could it be that you have forgotten? The books that you have read, aren't they also the books that I have read? Moreover, I still remember, searching and seeking, cold and cheerless, miserable and sorrowful. When the warmth returns to the cold, it is the most difficult to reconcile. How can 2 or 3 cups of light wine be compared to him? The evening wind is anxious. The wild goose passes by, grieving, but old acquaintances. Yellow flowers pile up all over the ground. Haggard and withered, who can take care of it now? Guarding the window, alone, how can it be dark? The wudong is drizzling, until dusk, little by little. This time, how can the word worry be enough?" "That's right." Wen Chu clutched her chest and nodded. "This is also my favorite poem. Previously, I had always recited it, and I remembered every single word clearly. However, I never understood the emotions behind it. However, when I see Chao Muya today, I feel as if I've awoken from my stupor, and I feel a pain in my heart. It's as if my heart is being torn apart. Damn it!" Xiao Hua was a little angry now. "I was wondering why immortal Emperor Go Chan let you out so easily. Could it be that he saw through something and did something to Chao Muya? Perhaps." Wen Chu shook his head slightly, confusion appearing in his eyes as he spoke in a low voice. Xiao Hua was conflicted. He wanted to save Xin, but he was also afraid that Wen Chu would encounter something fatal here. After all, he could feel Wen Chu's heartache. It could be said that this was Wen Chu's own feelings. To Xiao Hua, this was somewhat unreconciled. He was like a kite in the sky. At this moment, someone wanted to cut the string in Xiao Hua's hand and let the kite fly by itself. Xiao Hua hoped for this outcome, but he did not like the feeling of not being in control. "How about?" Xiao Hua probed. "I will first send you back to Shenhua continent?" Wen Chu bit his lips. How could he still be the Wan Chu palace master? He thought for a moment, then looked at Xiao Hua. "Fellow immortal, I came from you. We are of the same origin. Right now, my heart is in a mess, and I don't know what to do. Why don't you make the decision?" Xiao Hua took out the Kunlun mirror. However, as soon as he shook the mirror, he thought of something and asked, "Fellow immortal, do you remember Buddha Bodhi's choice on the primeval continent?" "Of course." Wen Chu nodded slightly. His eyes flashed with a hint of light as if he had thought of something. Xiao Hua also seemed to have made a decision. The Kunlun mirror did not emit a beam of light. Instead, he asked, "Humans must experience pain. The first birth of a fetus, the mother's pregnancy, and the pain of childbirth. There are all kinds of things in the mortal world, and many of them are disasters and pain. Fellow immortal, you are now the Wan Chu star. You are luckier than most people, and even more so than I. To be a human, you must not only have intelligence, physical body, and essence, but also emotions. These emotions, if they were I, then you would not be Wen Chu, but Xiao Hua. Now, I'm afraid it's time for you to truly become a human. Some pain is normal. Without these pains, how will you be reborn? At this point, Xiao Hua said very solemnly, So, it's better to leave this decision to fellow immortal. I understand. When Chu clutched his chest and nodded, I may not have Buddha Bodhi's wisdom, but I have Wen Chu's saint's finishing touch. I also have to face the test of heaven and earth. Let's go. With that, Wen Chu moved and headed towards Chao Muya. Seeing Wen Chu's back, Xiao Hua felt gratified. He put away the Kunlun mirror, swept it with his divine sense, and chased after Wen Chu. He knew that today was important to him, but to Wen Chu, it was even more important. After flying for another 100 or so miles, the light gray space gradually shone with light again. However, this light contained a kind of gloomy darkness. When it landed in the light gray space, it seemed very decadent. A feeling of time passing by involuntarily arose in Xiao Hua's heart. Looking at the ground, there were even more deep holes. The dark light fell into them like pitch-black eyes without eyeballs, revealing a powerless expression. Oh! Xiao Hua's eyes looked around. At this moment, his eyes narrowed, and he looked into the distance. In his divine sense, there was a cliff 10,000 miles away. Furthermore, when his divine sense reached the cliff, it was blocked. Needless to say, it was Chao Muya. Since Xiao Hua had discovered Chao Muya, how could Wen Chu not know? However, his reaction was different from Xiao Hua's. He continued to look forward, ignoring his surroundings. After discovering Chao Muya, the space started to change. Large pieces of space started to shatter. Wherever Xiao Hua's divine sense went, the entire space became like a beehive. The worldly energy and righteous energy became even thinner. When the air blew in this beehive, strange sounds came out. This sound directly penetrated the soul. Even people as strong as Xiao Hua and Wen Chu were not used to it. No wonder Gongshu Exian was so interested in the legend of tenderness like water, but didn't dare to come here. Most of the female cultivators on the hidden immortal continent probably don't have the strength to come to Chao Muya. Xiao Hua thought to himself, Immortal Emperor Go Chun is truly a scheming person. No one would have thought that he would place the Heaven's Punishment Prison crystal here. Xiao Hua saw 1,000 zhang tall cliff appear in the distance. This cliff appeared very abruptly on this bumpy ground. Xiao Hua heard the sound of wind howling like a tsunami coming from the top of the cliff. Then, he saw a layer of light cover the top of the cliff. Outside the cliff, where Xiao Hua's divine sense couldn't penetrate, a light like the first rays of the morning sun slowly rose. Chao Muya. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and laughed. It really is Chao Muya on the cliff. This Xiao understands now. Correct. Wen Chu also understood and nodded. This side of the cliff is gloomy and makes one's heart heavy. However, on the other side of the cliff is a fresh morning light. This is where hope lies. Chao Muya's name really lives up to its name. Unfortunately, the mysteries of heaven and earth were actually something that humans could guess. Without waiting for the two supreme cultivators of the 3 continents to finish speaking, the morning light actually crossed over the cliff and landed on this side of the cliff like the rising sun. The morning light quickly covered the space where Xiao Hua came from, and the previous light gray color actually turned into a sky blue color. An indescribable joy appeared in Xiao Hua and Wen Chu's hearts. Xiao Hua was a bit dumbfounded, because where the morning light passed, the other side of the cliff was covered by a light gray color again. Chao Muya? Chao Muya? Xiao Hua whispered. Could it be? It should be good. Wen Chu sighed and said, Confucian cultivators have a saying. Recently, books have come, only small talk, no words to say. Thus, I recognized it, listened to it, and planned to take the words lightly. Si Lantai Songyu, multi-talented, good at writing. Try and ask, Chao Chao Muya. Where do the clouds go? Chao Chao Muya is indeed long, but Chao Chao Muya is also fickle, more fleeting than the clouds. If I'm not wrong, this cliff should have 2 cliffs. One is Chao Muya, and the other is Chao Muya. The morning light and dusk light constantly change between these 2 cliffs? It can't be. Xiao Hua was a bit dumbfounded. He urged his body to rush up the cliff in the distance. When he stood still on the cliff, an inconceivable feeling appeared out of nowhere. Sure enough, just 1,000 miles away, there was also a tall cliff on the same level as the one Xiaohua was standing on. On that cliff, there was also a tall cultivator looking at Xiaohua. It was very strange. Although the two cliffs were 1,000 miles apart, when Xiaohua looked at that person, it was as if he was right in front of him. Even the shock in that person's eyes could be seen clearly. However, Xiaohua only glanced at that person for a moment before looking down at the bottom of the cliff. Even more unexpected to Xiaohua was that the bottom of the cliff was not the ground full of potholes, but a surging sea of clouds. Above the sea of clouds, thousands of layers of clouds rippled, covered by a myriad of colors. It was also different from the light gray and blue of Chaomuya. However, when Xiaohua's divine sense swept over it, he was stunned again. Because even with his divine sense, when it entered the sea of clouds, he could not see the end of it. It was as if the sea of clouds was boundless. Xiaohua, Master Xiaolei, Master of the Scholar Palace? The person from 1,000 miles away asked. Although his voice was soft, Xiaohua could hear it clearly. Xiaohua raised his head and looked at that person. He cupped his hands and said, "That's right. It's this Xiao. May I know who fellow immortal is in the Nangong family? P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to support it. Give a monthly vote, a recommendation vote, a collection, a gift, and thank all forms of support." Chapter 46:12. When that person saw that it was indeed Xiaohua, he didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly returned the greeting. "I am Nangong Yaji. Greetings, Master Xiaohua. Nangong Pingping is my son, and he has returned to my Nangong family. He will remember Master Xiaohua's help, and I will thank Master Xiaohua on his behalf." Seeing that Nangong Yaji was so polite, Xiaohua felt embarrassed and waved his hand with a smile. "This matter is already in the past. There is no need to mention it again. Is Nangong Tianji here?" Hearing Xiaohua mention Nangong Tianji, Nangong Yaji was stunned, and a look of disbelief appeared in his eyes. However, this look of surprise disappeared in a flash, and a kind of understanding appeared. He pondered for a moment and said, "Master Xiaohua, there is something you don't know. Not only is my family's master here, even my family's prince is also here." Nangong Yaji's words naturally had a double meaning. Hearing this, Xiaohua nodded and said, "It's good that you understand. I am also here for the same matter." "Sigh, I understand." Nangong Yaji sighed and cupped his hands. "Senior, please wait for a moment. I will invite my family's master to see." However, there was no need for Nangong Yaji to turn around. A slightly aged voice sounded from behind him. An old man in his 50s walked out from the light gray twilight. He looked at Xiaohua and said proudly, "Spiritual Master Xiao, you shouldn't have come." Xiaohua already knew that this person was the Nangong family's master, Nangong Tianji, from the words Taoist Xiao and not Master Xiao. Xiaohua looked indifferently at Nangong Tianji, who didn't greet him, and asked, "This sentence should be said by me, right?" "Humph." Nangong Tianji harumphed coldly. "I've been wondering what kind of question you're going to ask the Gaochen when you came to the Immortal Palace and destroyed the South Heaven Gate, forcing the master of the Two Pureness Palace and the Gaochen to intervene. However, I, the Nangong family, even the four great families and the 100 schools of thought on the hidden immortal continent guessed many answers. However, no one expected that you wanted to ask about the whereabouts of the 9th princess. You should be honored." Xiaohua said with a smile. "You are the first to know." Nangong Tianji stood there like a mountain. It was as if he had merged with Chaomuya, as he naturally exuded a domineering aura. He turned a deaf ear to Xiaohua's reply and continued, "Since you know that my Nangong family is looking for the whereabouts of the 9th princess, you shouldn't have interfered. Or perhaps, you should have informed this old man beforehand. After all, the Nangong family is in the light while you are in the dark. Now, you and I have both fallen into Gaochen's trap. Not only you, but even my Nangong family is in a dilemma." Xiaohua was also standing on the Day cliff. His figure was like a gentle breeze, and under the bright light of dawn, he exuded an indescribable aura of confidence. Even his words were filled with the light of dawn. Did I tell you that the Nangong family wouldn't come to the Day and Day Cliff? Even if we know that Morning Moo Cliff is part of the Gauchin scheme, Xian is right there. Will your Nangong family give up? I won't. Nangong Tianji replied firmly, but this old man can at least persuade you not to come where Xian is. Even if there are thousands of soldiers and horses, even if there are mountains of blades and seas of flames, I'm not afraid. Xiao Hua also said firmly. Damn it. Nangong Tianji didn't need to say anything. Nangong Jingyin had already charged out from behind him. Her resolute face was now somewhat twisted as she roared furiously. Xiao Hua, do you know how much I love the Ninth Princess? As a level 9 Grand Ascension Stage Senior, you actually dare to fight with me over the Ninth Princess. How do you want me to face the mouths of the people in the world? Sigh. Xiao Hua also sighed. Looking at Nangong Jingyin, he thought of the fire Qilin in Ardent Fire Mountain. He raised his hand and pointed at Nangong Jingyin. Nangong Jingyin, don't put on an act in front of this Xiao. Xian is only the ninth princess in your heart, not Xian. You are only marrying Xian for your position in the Immortal Palace and for the benefit of your Nangong family. Your so-called love is probably just your own wishful thinking. Speaking up to here, Xiao Hua looked at Nangong Tianji and smiled. Since you can see that this is a mortal Emperor Go Chen's scheme, and you don't want to fight to the death with this Xiao and let immortal Emperor Go Chen reap the benefits. How about this? You and I work together and find the heaven punishment prison crystal that is imprisoning Xian. After we break it and save Xian, we will see her choice. If she goes with Nangong Jingyin, then this Xiao will leave immediately. If Xian chooses this Xiao, then the Nangong family will leave immediately. This way, neither of our families will suffer any losses. The ninth princess must go with my Nangong family. Nangong Tianji said plainly. This matter has already been decided that day in Lingyun Palace. Xiao Hua's tone became even more indifferent. Nangong Tianji, you are wrong. Xian must go with this Xiao. Before Lingyun Palace, before she was imprisoned in the heaven punishment prison crystal, her heart was already in this Xiao's heart. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Nangong Jingyin's face flushed red. He had calculated everything, but he missed out on Xian's heart. Right now, he was in a dilemma. If the Nangong family was defeated by Xiao Hua's fortune gate, then the Nangong family's face would fall to the ground. But even if the Nangong family defeated Xiao Hua and he married the ninth princess, would that ninth princess still be the ninth princess in his heart? Although he still cared about the ninth princess's identity as a man, how could he allow such feelings to exist in this world? Nangong Jingyin. Xiao Hua sneered. Looking at your appearance, this old man wants to pity you. Unfortunately, a pitiful person must have a hateful side. If you didn't take advantage of the situation and wanted to destroy Xian's happiness, how could you have fallen to such a state? Taoist Xiao. Nangong Tianji's tone was still arrogant, but there was a hint of euphemism in it. You are a Grand Ascension Stage Taoist. You must have seen through the myriad emotions of the mortal world. The so-called love between a man and a woman is nothing more than two hearts. Taoist Xiao must have met a lot of female cultivators in his life. I'm sure you have experienced a lot of such things. Why should you care about the ninth princess? If you think that the ninth princess is a little interesting, there are other princesses other than the ninth princess. Why do you want to compete with my Nangong family? Or, if you are willing, this old man also has a beautiful descendant. As long as you like her, this old man can betroth her to you as a concubine. Moreover, with Taoist Zhao's current cultivation, it won't be long before you ascend. If you ascend, what will happen to the ninth princess? You covet the happiness of the past few decades and delay the ninth princess's future happiness. From what this old man can see, you are the one who will destroy the ninth princess's happiness. Don't young people have a saying that if there is a kind of love, it is called letting go? Why can't you let go? Xiao Hua smiled in the face of Nangong Tianji's earnest persuasion. He rubbed his nose and said, You must be a romantic person when you were young. Who knows how many women you have said these words to? If there was someone who didn't know, they would be moved by your heartfelt words. However, this Xiao finds it funny. This Xiao and Xian have true feelings for each other. Why must this Xiao let go for the sake of true feelings? Your Nangong family is sacrificing Xian's happiness for your own benefits. You are the despicable ones. Yet, you are accusing me of this. This is the biggest joke in the world. Xiaohua. Seeing that his persuasion was fruitless, Nangong Tianji's expression changed and he asked, "Do you really want to fight with my Nangong family? Don't think that you can block my attack just because you are a Taoist Grand Ascension stage expert and have the Scholar Palace's master by your side. Don't think that you have the strength to sweep across the hidden immortal continent just because you have the Fortune Gates army. Let me tell you honestly, the four great families are far from what you know. The four great families that you see are only the four great families that we want you to see. Even if you have the strength to wreak havoc in the immortal palace, even if you have the ability to kill demonic realm experts, you are definitely not my Nangong family's opponent." Nangong Tianji looked up at the sky and said proudly, "The so-called immortal palace is just an empty name. The Sun family is the representative of the 100 schools of thought. They can't represent the four great families. We are only following the agreement of the ancient war to allow the Sun family to enter the immortal palace." Ha ha ha. Xiaohua laughed and pointed at Nangong Tianji. "Nangong Tianji, you are really boasting all the way to the southern heavenly gate. Aren't you afraid of being stabbed by Sun Jian's three-pointed, double-edged blade? If your Nangong family is so powerful, why are you fighting with me over Xian? Furthermore, Nangong Pingbing and the others know that I know the five energies unifications. You also know that the Scholar Palace's master is my good friend. I don't believe that you didn't connect this matter with Xian, losing the heaven's will. I don't believe that you can't guess what I asked Immortal Emperor Gaochen when I went to the Immortal Palace. You're wasting your breath on this Xiao, trying to make this Xiao feel guilty. Isn't that just showing that you're afraid of this Xiao? Nangong Tianji, don't you know that there's a saying among Confucian cultivators, 300 taels of silver here?" At this point, a meaningful smile appeared on Xiaohua's face, and he continued, "Isn't your goal the five-cheese unification technique? Why do you want to be a prostitute and set up a monument for your chastity?" Facing the Nangong family who wanted to snatch Xinshin, Xiaohua's tone was exceptionally vicious. When Nangong Tianji heard this, a hideous smile appeared on his face. Xiaohua, since you know about it, why are you still doubting the strength of the Nangong family? If it weren't for the five-cheese unification technique, how could this old man go to the immortal palace to propose marriage? P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 46:13. Xiaohua sneered, "Don't make yourself sound so far-sighted." At that time, Immortal Emperor Gochun didn't have the 5-Chi unification art yet. If you knew it was in my hands, you wouldn't have let Nangong Jingyin go to the Hall of Fragrance. Instead, you would have let Nangong Jingyin throw herself at me. After you flattered Immortal Emperor Gochun and found out that the 5-Chi unification art was in Mayan Wenchu's hands, you realized that you had fallen into Immortal Emperor Gochun's trap and planned to ambush me and Wenchu to get the 5-Chi unification art. And if I'm not wrong, the Dongfang family, Shimin family, and Baiming family will all appear, right? As soon as Xiaohua's voice faded, an even more imposing figure appeared beside Nangong Tianji. This person was over 10 meters tall, his hair was completely white, and when he opened and closed his eyes, his gaze was different from ordinary people's. In his eyes, a faint golden light was flowing, just like two suns. That person looked at Xiaohua with a face as bright as a full moon and said with a dignified voice, "Xiaohua, this old man has underestimated you." Sigh. Xiaohua looked at the newcomer and sighed. "Dongfang Qianghao, this Xiao overestimated you." That day in Xingyue Palace, this Xiao already told Dongfang Yushan clearly, "I didn't think that you would still come. Yushan and the others are only disciples of my Dongfang family." Dongfang Qianghao smiled and replied, just as Brother Tianji said, "What they know is only a drop in the ocean of our four great families." The message that you wanted to convey to this old man through Yushan This old man has already received it. But don't you think that your little tricks are really unpresentable? Don't you all agree? Haha, of course. Following Dongfang Qionghao's voice, two more figures appeared on the other side of the cliff. On the left side, a tall and thin old man wearing a lake blue sword robe, who was even taller than Xiao Hua by a head, stood out. This old man had a long and narrow face and a pair of silver-white eyes. When his eyes moved, a faint moonlight flowed. Wasn't this the patriarch of Shimin clan, Shimin Jianzhong? On the other side of him, a plump, middle-aged man dressed in a royal blue, scholarly robe stood out. Although this man's face was big, his eyebrows were slightly smaller, giving him a delicate and pretty look. What was special was that this middle-aged man's arms were slightly longer, and the index fingers on his hands were even more slender. Wasn't this the Baiming family's clan head, Baiming Choqing? That's right. I didn't think that a grand ascension stage being like him would be able to see so far ahead. Baiming Choqing's voice was rather shrill. Similarly, Nangong Tianji did not speak for a long time. When the other three patriarchs stood still, he sighed again and asked, Xiao Hua, could it be that you saw through this from the start? If that's the case, you're even more terrifying than the Grand Mist ancestor. How could Xiao Hua have thought so much before? However, when he saw how scheming Nangong Tianji was, he went along with what Nangong Tianji said. When he heard Nangong Tianji's sigh and the appearance of the three family heads, he was even more moved. He smiled and said, There are only a few ordinary people in the world who can become saints. No one is smarter than anyone else. The only thing that you and I have more than others is that we have more information. Xiao Hua did not admit it, nor did he deny it. This allowed Nangong Tianji to confirm his judgment. He looked at Xiao Hua and probed, So you're saying that you're already prepared to face the four patriarchs? Xiao Hua rubbed his nose and revealed a mysterious smile. He replied, I believe that I've already done it. However, whether or not I can block it depends on the strength of the four patriarchs. Of course, if you want to give it a try, you can give the order now. And, if you've already made plans, you can also give the order to attack the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range in Shao Country. You're thinking too much. Dongfang Qionghao sneered. The goal of the four patriarchs is the five Qis unification, not the Dao sects. The Shao Country and Soaring Dragon Mountain Range's Fortune Gate are things that the Immortal Palace, 100 Schools of Philosophers, and even Vairocana Buddha should consider. It has nothing to do with the four patriarchs. However, you have to be careful. Who knows, the Immortal Palace might have already sent their immortal army to attack the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. When you're defeated here and run back in panic, there will be no more lair for you to lick your wounds. After probing the situation, Xiao Hua was relieved. He smiled and said, If the Immortal Palace attacks, that would be the best. First, this Xiao's plan will not be in vain. Second, this Xiao will have a falling out with the Immortal Palace. Xiao Hua, you actually still have hope for that bastard Gaochen. Shimin Jianzhong couldn't help but persuade him again. Could it be that you didn't know why he sent the master of the Wenchu Palace to your side? See, when Shimin Jianzhong said that, Xiao Hua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He didn't think that the four patriarchs would make a move. Naturally, he didn't think that Immortal Emperor Gaochen would send Wenchu to help him. He and Wenchu naively thought that Immortal Emperor Gaochen was thinking for Xian. However, now it seemed that Immortal Emperor Gaochen was sitting high up and had foresight. He sent Wenchu to the hidden immortal continent to help him. He might have wanted to kill the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness. Damn it! Xiao Hua cursed in his mind. However, he didn't admit it and simply said, Gaochen's thoughts are his business. Fellow immortal Wenchu is my good friend. If I want to face the four patriarchs, he will definitely help. Dongfang Qionghao smiled and said, Daoist Xiao, the title of Lightning Master might not be comparable to the title of Dragon Master. The title of the Wenchu Palace Master can't buy someone's life. The four of us have been waiting for you for many days. Now that Brother Tianji has said so much, it's only to let you know the true colors of Gaochen. The Wenchu Palace Master gave him the 5-energy origin method, a pearl thrown into darkness. Ever since he stood on the sunset cliff, Wenchu's mind was no longer on the cliff. Instead, He looked up at the sky. His eyes were filled with confusion, sadness, sorrow, joy, and melancholy. All kinds of thoughts and emotions were born and extinguished like the wind and clouds. Since Wen Chu was like this, Xiaohua was even more careful. He had said so much to Nangong Tianji, and at the same time, he was also stalling for time for Wen Chu. He was very clear in his heart that it was already the crucial moment for Wen Chu to break out of his cocoon and be reborn. If Wen Chu missed this opportunity, who knew when he would truly become an adult? However, Xiaohua smiled wryly because Dongfang Qianghao and the others were staring at Wen Chu. They clearly knew that Wen Chu had the 5-energy origin method. Even though Wen Chu ignored Dongfang Qianghao's words were meant for Wen Chu, Xiaohua had no choice but to continue. This Xiao understands what you mean, and this Xiao has already told Nangong Tianji that the 5 Qis unification technique is here. As long as you and the other family heads of the 4 great families send out a document and hand it over to this Xiao, after finding the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal, this Xiao will definitely hand over the 5 Qis unification technique to you. That way, we can solve this problem without bloodshed and won't fall into immortal Emperor Gaochun's trap. After he finished speaking, Xiaohua stood with his hands behind his back and gazed at the sky just like Wen Chu. At this moment, the light of dawn that enveloped the cliff Xiaohua was on started to change again, and it flashed towards the cliff the 4 great clans were on. After Xiaohua and Wen Chu, the light gray twilight slowly rose again. As Xiaohua had expected, the 4 families' patriarchs also stood firm like boulders on the mountain cliff. They didn't discuss this through voice transmission. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Dongfang Qianghao spoke, "Xiaohua, you've just taken over the Fortune Gate, so you don't know the hardships of our 4 families. That's why you're offering such conditions. Do you think that our 4 clans have been able to stand on the hidden immortal continent for so many years because of the so-called Confucian secret arts?" No. Xiaohua withdrew his gaze and looked at Dongfang Qianghao. I know. The so-called face is more important than the 5-energy origin method in your eyes. I know that you won't agree, and Immortal Emperor Gaochun also knows that you won't agree. In my eyes, Xinxin's freedom, Xinxin's happiness, and love for Xinxin are all more important than the 5 Qis unification technique. You 4 clans know this, and Immortal Emperor Gaochun also knows this. Therefore, Dongfang Qianghao nodded and solemnly said, even if we know that this is Immortal Emperor Gaochun's plan, and he knows that we will see through it, we still have to take action. This is fate. When the Nangong family proposed the marriage, this ending was already planted. Xiaohua nodded and said, I have already said this before. Shimin Jianzhong laughed and said loudly, you have said this before, but at that time, you only said it to Brother Tianji, not to the 4 clans. This old man is very interested. Xiaohua, even if you have more than 200,000 Fortune Gate soldiers, as well as the Scholar Palace's master and other 9th grade origin Qi realm cultivators helping you, why do you think you can withstand the combined might of our 4 families? This is something that even the Immortal Palace can't do, just based on the so-called love in your heart? Xiaohua had been paying attention to Wen Chu. At this time, the emotions in Wen Chu's eyes had begun to stabilize. Although these emotions still seemed a bit erratic, and there was still some distance between them and the final moment, after hearing Shimin Jianzhong's words, Xiaohua knew that he had no chance to delay any longer. He smiled and took out the Kunlun mirror, saying, Love is the sun in the sky, sprinkling the sunlight down. Strength is the earth, carrying the sunlight, turning the beauty and the light into the world of mortals. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 46:14. Brother Qianghao, take back your luck. Biming Chui Qing, who had been silent all this while, finally opened her mouth. She sneered, I've said it before. A man trapped by love is a stupid donkey. If he doesn't put up a wall, he won't turn back. Your so-called not to fight if you can is not tenable at all. Dongfang Qianghao glared at Biming Chui Qing and said, in today's battle, the Fortune Gate will be destroyed, and our 4 families will also suffer heavy losses. Not only will the Immortal Palace benefit, that Brat Grand Mist will also benefit. This will greatly affect the future of the hidden immortal continent. Naturally, we won't fight if we can. Mournful cries of the 6 armies, angry for a beauty. Nangong Tianji looked up and laughed. Xiaohua, if you fall today, your name will be remembered in the future. The 9th princess and our Nangong family's reputation will be even more resounding. Yes, Xiaohua nodded. This Xiao also thinks so. Xin has done so much for this Xiao. To have the Nangong family and even the 4 families as a wedding gift, this story will definitely be passed down through the ages. As Xiao Hua's voice fell, the Kunlun mirror in Xiao Hua's hand activated. A beam of 9-colored light shone down on the dawn and sunset cliff. 200,000 Fortune Gates Iron Army charged out in formation, exuding a cold-blooded and stern battle intent. Not to mention the 4 families' patriarchs, even the clouds and the sea of clouds were stirred up. Sure enough, it's the capital star formation. The Fortune Gates Iron Army's reputation is well-deserved. Dongfang Qianghao nodded and praised when he saw the Fortune Gates disciples forming 2 battle formations. Nangong Tianji sneered. Everyone's rumors are ridiculous. What Fortune Gates Iron Army's disciples are all 5th level and above? It seems like most of them are nascent Soul Realm cultivators. We're making a big fuss over a minor issue. Isn't that better? Baiming Chuiqing laughed. Your Nangong family's prestige will be enhanced by annihilating the Fortune Gate. Nangong Tianji's gaze swept over Baiming Chuiqing, and just as he was about to speak, Dongfang Qianghao frowned and said, Tianji, prepare to meet the enemy. Yes. Nangong Tianji's heart skipped a beat, and he nodded. Then, he waved his hand, and a colorful flag the size of a palm appeared in the air. This colorful flag expanded in the wind, and Tum Nangong, words that were embroidered with colorful silk threads appeared on it. As Nangong Tianji breathed out a mouthful of true energy into the flag, 5 colored clouds flew out from the tube Nangong inscriptions. As the clouds surged, countless bean-sized disciples wearing golden armor rushed out with weapons in their hands. Flag of hidden troops? When Chu narrowed his eyes and looked at the tens of thousands of disciples falling in the air, they turned into the size of an ordinary person and said in a low voice, This is the weapon of the ancient Confucian. I thought it had been lost in the hidden immortal continent. I didn't expect the 4 great families to still have it. Fellow Taoist, Xiaohua asked worriedly, how do you feel now? Battle spirit. When Chu's tone was as sharp as sword chi as he said, all the heartache, pity, and regret from before have now turned into battle intent. We'll only know the answer after this battle. That's strange. Xiaohua said curiously, you still don't know why this happened. It's like looking at flowers in the fog, fishing for the moon in the water. When Chu nodded and said with a smile, let's fight. We'll cross the bridge when we get there. All right. Xiaohua replied and looked out of Chamu Cliff again. At this time, the Nangong family's battle team had finished assembling. There were also 200,000 disciples wearing golden armor. Most of them were scholars, and their strength was about the same as the Fortune Gates battle team. Similar to the Fortune Gates formation, the 200,000 Nangong family disciples were also divided into a dozen or so smaller formations. In front of each formation, there was a disciple with Grandmaster or Martial Grandmaster Cultivation holding a colorful flag. As these disciples waved their flags, the 200,000 Nangong family disciples slapped their own heads and released their true chi. Wong Wong. Although the righteous chi in front of the sunset cliff had already dissipated, the several 100,000 Nangong family disciples activated their cultivation techniques, and a large amount of righteous chi poured down. Rays of light flashed, and inscriptions flowed, and a dozen golden chrysanthemums appeared in the air. These dozen chrysanthemums looked as if they were made by heaven. Every petal and every pattern was resplendent, and a powerful aura surged out. In the air above the Fortune Gates battle team, the air started to vibrate and flow violently. When autumn comes, 8th of the 9th month, when my flower blooms, 100 flowers will die. The incense bursts into the sky, and the entire city is covered in golden armor. The poetic words formed a killing intent that pounced towards the Fortune Gates disciples. The 200,000 Fortune Gates disciples in front of them were naturally not the 200,000 Fortune Gates disciples that had swept through the thousand demons' sacred grounds, nor were they the 200,000 Fortune Gates disciples that had fought against the devil race in the ancient ruins. However, among these 200,000 disciples, 10,000 of them were the Fortune Gates disciples that had swept through the thousand demons' sacred grounds. When they saw the Nangong family's disciples charging towards them, they had already given the order. The battle intent of the heavenly star formation soared to the sky as they faced the enemy head-on. Although the 400,000 disciples had yet to clash, the wind and clouds above the morning sky cliff had already changed. Layers of dark clouds formed in the sky, and tornadoes tore the dark clouds apart. A heavy pressure that could destroy a city gradually formed. The Fortune Gates disciples are indeed powerful. Nangong Tianji's face turned solemn as he said in a low voice, "Although they are not as miraculous as the legends say, they are evenly matched with my Nangong family's battle team." After this battle, Nangong Tianji stopped talking and didn't say anything else. Beside him, Baiming Choqing laughed loudly and said, "Brother Tianji, you are too stingy. Although today is a matter of our four great clans, it is also a good thing for your Jingyi. If you don't contribute, who will? However, seeing that our four great clans are one, how can my Baiming family stand idly by when the Nangong family is facing the enemy?" "Zhu Baiming Choqing roared and took out a bronze arrow from her waist. She threw it into the air and shouted, "Zhu come out and meet the enemy." Boom! When the command arrow landed in the air, the blood-red clouds surged and the sound of war drums rang out from the command arrow. As the war drums rang out, the command arrow expanded rapidly. Groups of Baiming family disciples in light blue armor charged out from the command arrow with weapons in their hands. Garrison order. When Chu revealed the origin of the arrow and said with a smile, "It seems like the four great clans are also taking out their trump cards." The previous Hidden Troops flag and the current garrison order are both ancient military saint artifacts that have been lost since ancient times. I didn't expect them to appear together today. No wonder immortal Emperor Go-chan is worried about the four great clans. P.S. Happy birthday to Alliance Leader, holding plum flowers and smelling flowers. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, gift, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 46:15. Xiao Hua snorted and said indifferently, "It's just a temporary imperial artifact. How can it be compared to my Taoist artifact?" "You're right, fellow Taoist." When Chu nodded and said, "The garrison order, the troop concealing flag, the troop gathering drum, and the troop withdrawal gong are the four ancient imperial artifacts recorded in the history books of Confucian cultivators. If I'm not mistaken, they're all in the hands of the four great families." 200,000 disciples of the Baiming family flew out from the garrison order and formed a team. True energy and rosy clouds surged out from the disciples and condensed into a snowy plum blossom in the air. These 200,000 disciples of the Baiming family surrounded the other side of the Fortune Gates disciples under the command of their commander. The momentum was terrifying. "Ha!" Xiao Hua laughed loudly. He raised a finger and pointed at the Kunlun mirror, saying, "So, the four big families are really planning to destroy my Fortune Gate. It looks like this war will not end until one side is dead. Good. Since that's the case, this old man will not hold back today and let you see the strength of my Fortune Gate's disciples." Boom, boom, boom. Several light pillars rushed out from the Kunlun mirror. Roar, roar, roar. Another team of Fortune Gate's disciples roared and rushed out from the Shenhua continent. This team of disciples was different from the previous ones. When they rushed into the sky, they condensed into the shape of a rooster. It was the plentiful sun devil devouring immortal array. This, Baiming Choqing was stunned. He was not surprised that Xiao Hua could take out more disciples, but the immortal array formed by these disciples. This plentiful sun devil devouring immortal array was Yang. Lightning surged around the Fortune Gates disciples, and the soaring aura was like the scorching sun pouncing on the Baiming family. The snowy plum blossom was already showing signs of withering. Biming Cui-Qing's shock was destined to not stop. When the 200,000 disciples lined up neatly, the murderous aura was like an unsheathed sword. He could not help but whisper, "Damn it, how many nascent soul disciples does the Fortune Gate have? Didn't they say there were 200,000? How come there are 400,000 now? Are my eyes playing tricks on me?" Shimin Jianzhong sneered. He also raised his hand and took out an ancient copper gong from somewhere. The copper gong was engraved with many armor inscriptions. These armor inscriptions glowed like silver orchids. Shimin Jianzhong didn't say anything. He flicked his middle finger and hit the gong. Bang! A soft sound was heard. The inscriptions on the gong began to move along with the sound of the gong. Rays of light gushed out from the surface of the gong, and the inscriptions jumped down like fleas. When these inscriptions landed in the air, they transformed into the disciples of the Shimin family wearing silver-white armor. Oh, 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 oh. The Shimin family disciples roared as they landed in the air. They flew out of Dawn and Dawncliff and quickly formed into battle squads. In the time it took to finish half a meal, the 200,000 members of the Shimin aristocratic family had formed into an orchid-like battle team. An elegant yet formless aura filled the air once again. Furthermore, this aura combined with the aura of the other battle squads and trapped Dawncliff firmly. Kill? Xiao Hua raised his head and looked at the provocation and mockery in the eyes of the four great families' patriarchs. He coldly shouted a single word. The word kill turned into a ball of light and flew into the Kunlun mirror. Boom! Another pillar of light appeared, and the Fortune Gate's battle squads rushed out once again. Heavens! Nangong Tianji looked at the Fortune Gate's disciples flying out like carps crossing the river and couldn't help but groan. Just how many disciples does this Fortune Gate have? When I saw that the profound yellow board was filled with Fortune Gate's disciples, I was already shocked. However, when I heard that they had 200,000 disciples sweeping through the 1,000 demons' sacred grounds, I was even more shocked. Now, they have 600,000 disciples. 600,000 nascent soul realm disciples. Nangong Tianji didn't know how to continue. He couldn't help but look at Dongfang Qianghao. He knew that a battle squad of 600,000 nascent soul realm disciples was enough to wipe out the 100 schools of philosophers from the hidden immortal continent. Even the four great families weren't willing to provoke such a powerful opponent. Dongfang Qianghao's eyes narrowed slightly. The brilliant young eyes hidden in his eyes couldn't help but shine like the sun. The shock in his heart wasn't any less than Nangong Tianji and the others. He had already known about Xiao Hua's rise from his family's secret report. Moreover, he had also carefully read all the information about Xiao Hua. Of course, he didn't know much more than Fairy Xingyu. Although the Dongfang family's ability to gather information was stronger than star-picking houses. In Dongfang Qianghao's eyes, although Xiao Hua was powerful, he was the same as the Grand Mist Ancestor and the other powerful Dao sect cultivators on the hidden immortal continent. In terms of individual strength, he was close to the peak of the 9th grade. However, in terms of the strength of his sect, each and every one of them was weak. Dongfang Qianghao and the patriarchs of the four great families had the same countermeasure to deal with this kind of Dao sect cultivator. After all, the purpose of a cultivator's cultivation was to ascend. When one reached the final step of cultivation, no one would be willing to risk their lives. As long as they didn't lose face, they wouldn't kill fiercely. Although this kind of cultivator was fierce in the end, if it wasn't for the fact that their lifespan was limited and they couldn't break through the bottleneck, they would die of old age. Otherwise, they would be killed by the four great families. After all, a person's energy was limited. It was impossible to be vigilant against tens of thousands of disciples at all times. However, when Dongfang Qianghao heard that Xiao Hua had 200,000 disciples, he couldn't sit still. 200,000 nascent soul disciples. Not 2,000, but 200,000. This was something that had never happened on the hidden immortal continent. There had never been a Dao sect with 200,000 disciples on the hidden immortal continent. In particular, Dongfang Qianghao could see that the Fortune Gate had a close relationship with the Immortal Palace. Whether it was to destroy the Dao sect or to limit the Immortal Palace's strength, The four great families couldn't let the Fortune Gate continue to exist on the hidden, immortal continent. Therefore, after receiving Nangong Tianji's message, he made the decision today. However, the patriarchs of the four great families, including Dongfang Qianghao, didn't expect that the previously unknown Xiao Hua had already surpassed their expectations. Although they had already mobilized 200,000 disciples from their respective sects to surround the Fortune Gate's 200,000 disciples and annihilate them, Xiao Hua's Kunlun mirror gave them a resounding slap in the face. Today, not only would they not be able to defeat Xiao Hua, they would most likely be defeated. Since they had already come to this point, Dongfang Qianghao couldn't retreat. He raised his hand and took out a fist-sized drum and threw it into the air. Dong! As Dongfang Qianghao spat out a stream of qi on the drum, the small drum suddenly expanded and turned into a light projection that resembled a city gate. Kill! Waves of battle cries rang out from the city gate. Groups of Dongfang family's disciples in golden armor flew out valiantly. When these disciples stood still outside the cliff, there were at least 300,000 of them. The army formed by these 300,000 disciples was similar to the three aristocratic families from before, also in the shape of a bamboo flower. Their golden brilliance was mixed with soaring battle intent as they charged towards Xiao Hua's Chaomuya. However, Xiao Hua, who was standing on Chaomu Cliff, didn't activate the Kunlun mirror. Instead, he frowned and whispered to Wen Chu beside him. There was a trace of anxiety on Wen Chu's face. Humph. Strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Dongfang Qianghao coldly snorted and ordered, Jinzhong, Tianji, Chuiqing, prepare yourselves. Don't let the palace of literature's master escape. In today's battle, not only will we destroy the Fortune Gate and dispel the North Star's delusion, but we will also leave behind the 5 Qi unification art. After the three great families' patriarchs responded and Dongfang Qianghao was about to give the order, Xiao Hua, who was standing on Chaomu Cliff, seemed to have noticed something different. He casually raised his hand again. Boom! The Kunlun mirror rumbled again, and groups of Fortune Gate's disciples flew out again. Dongfang Qianghao was dumbfounded. Shimin Jianzhong was dumbfounded. Nangong Tianji was dumbfounded, and Baiming Chuiqing was dumbfounded. The 4 Fortune Gate disciples' eyeballs spun rapidly as they watched the Fortune Gate disciples fly out one after another. They were still calculating how many Fortune Gate disciples would fly out, but when they saw more than a dozen Fortune Gate disciples flying out, the 4 Fortune Gate disciples completely gave up. Dongfang Qianghao's gaze swept across Shimin Jianzhong and the other 2. His eyes were filled with shock and regret. The 300,000 Fortune Gate's disciples not only consisted of humans, but also dragons. A total of 300,000 disciples formed a heart-cleansing winnowing basket formation. A huge shadow of a leopard appeared in the sky above the battlefield. Layers of air currents surged in the sky. The shadow seemed to be alive as it roared and pounced on the bamboo flowers. The 900,000 disciples from the 4 great families and Fortune Gate's disciples had already caused a change in the weather. The morning and evening lights began to sway under the rapid absorption of the righteous energy and heaven and earth origin energy. Even the 2 Chaomu cliffs that stood tall like jade pillars were swaying. Needless to say, the sea of clouds at the bottom of the abyss seemed to be stirred up by a giant hand. Strange hissing sounds could be heard as if a powerful monster was howling at the bottom of the abyss. Seeing that their advantage in numbers was gone, Dongfang Qianghao hesitated. In his life, he had never hesitated as much as he did today. Even when facing immortal Emperor Go Chun, he was calm. He had lost his usual decisiveness. My sons. While Dongfang Qianghao was pondering, Xiao Hua raised his head and looked at the patriarchs of the 4 great clans. His eyes flashed with deep mockery. Xiao Hua raised his hand again and shouted, "The immortal palace has been shaken by your might after you all cleared the Confucian cultivators' Xianhuang list. However, the 4 great families still have the intention to destroy my Fortune Gate. Today, you even set up a battle formation at the Chaomu Cliffs to kill my Fortune Gate. Everyone, listen to my command. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I will definitely retaliate. Kill." P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it. give it as a gift, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 46:16. Kill, 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 kill. The four battle teams shouted the word kill repeatedly. Every time they shouted, the morale of the Fortune Gate disciples rose by a notch. After the fourth shout, the 900,000 Fortune Gate disciples' morale soared. The four battle teams charged towards the four families' battle teams. Dongfang Qianghao was filled with regret, but he didn't have time to say anything. He raised his hand and tapped on the drum, causing it to soar into the sky again. Dong, dong, dong. The sound of the drum resounded through the sky. Kill. Following Dongfang Qianghao's command, the four flowers moved, emitting a dazzling light as they pounced on the Fortune Gate's disciples in the form of rabbits, golden crows, leopards, and roosters. As soon as the two sides' disciples came into contact with each other, a thunderous boom rang out, and light and clouds splashed in all directions. Xiao Hua glanced at Wen Chu and said, "Fellow immortal, earlier, the 200,000 Fortune Gates disciples swept through the 1,000 beast sacred grounds, several hundred high-grade disciples cleaned up the mysterious yellow list, and the soaring Dragon Mountain Ranges Shao country established their country were all to intimidate ordinary Confucian cultivators, so that they wouldn't dare to underestimate our Fortune Gates disciples. Today, our 900,000 Fortune Gates disciples are fighting against the four families. This is the time for our Fortune Gate to establish our might on the hidden immortal mainland. After this battle, our Fortune Gate will be like the scorching noon sun, shining with invincible brilliance and looking down on the three continents." Sigh. Wen Chu also felt pity at this time. Looking at the two sides fighting, there were already people screaming and falling into the abyss. He said, "I still underestimated the human heart and humanity. I really didn't expect that there would be such a big battle today. Maybe there will be a fierce battle at the soaring Dragon Mountain Range." "It doesn't matter." Xiao Hua smiled faintly and said, "Even if there is a fierce battle, 100,000 disciples and fellow immortal Feng are enough. I don't believe that the four families have the strength to spare to attack the soaring Dragon Mountain Range." Wen Chu nodded and said, "Their goal is the 5-Chi unification technique, so there shouldn't be any problems. Fellow immortals, it's time to come out and meet the four most ancient families on the hidden immortal mainland." Xiao Hua raised his hand and pointed at the Kunlun mirror. The lightning Taoist and celestial being flew out of the light pillar. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "I'm afraid these two fellow immortals won't be able to hide from the eyes and ears of the four families. Greetings, fellow Taoist." The Thunderbolt Reverend and the Celestial landed in midair. However, they instantly understood the current situation of the battle. The Thunderbolt Reverend and the Celestial cupped their hands and bowed. This poor Taoist truly did not expect that the four great clans would actually want to attack first. After Xiao Hua and Wen Chu returned the greeting, they smiled and said, "I'll have to trouble the two of you again today. Humph, daring to have designs on my Fortune Gate, daring to disturb I's cultivation. All of them deserve to die." The Celestial being spat viciously. "May I know which one friend wants me to kill? Let's go. We'll go take a look. We'll kill whoever suits our tastes." Xiao Hua smiled and flew out of Chao Muya. Seeing Xiao Hua and the other three flying out, the patriarchs of the four great families also flew out on clouds. However, right after the four of them flew out, more than 10 white-haired old men also flew out. These old men were dressed differently, following behind different patriarchs. Obviously, they belonged to different families. A 9th-grade origin energy literature saint? Xiao Hua exclaimed in shock when he saw these old men. Is there really a literature saint with strength comparable to a literature star in this world? Wen Chu didn't find it strange at all. He said indifferently, "The true cultivation system of us Confucian cultivators is to refine essence into qi, refine qi into spirit, refine spirit into the void, and refine the void into the heavens. The so-called scholar, master of literature, grandmaster, great-grandmaster, literature saint, and literature star are just some titles. They are different from the Tao Gates qi refining, foundation establishment, and nascent soul realms. As time passes, it's inevitable that people will misunderstand. A literature star is actually similar to a great sage in the thousand demons' sacred ground. Without great fortune, one can't be called a literature star. As for fortune, the 100 schools of thought should have their own secrets, not to mention the 4 great families. Every generation's patriarch would become a literature star. But what about those literature saints who are not weaker than the patriarchs? Although they don't have any fortune, they can still cultivate. Refining the heavens and refining the void doesn't care if you have the merit of teaching them. So what if they are 9th-level literature saints? The Celestial sneered, they are just some middle-level 9th-level Confucian cultivators. When Chu glanced at him, the Celestial replied, but what if 4 or 5 middle-level 9th-level Confucian cultivators and 1 upper-level 9th-level Confucian cultivator attack you? Kill them all. The Celestial spat out 3 words. However, after a moment, he turned around and asked, fellow Taoist Xiao, can I borrow your disciple's weapon? Xiao Hua understood that the Celestial was talking about Yuan Ye's bone spear. He smiled and said, of course. Yuan Ye is also your disciple. The Celestial nodded. I know. After the Celestial finished speaking, Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out the bone spear. The Celestial took the bone spear and waved it in the air. Swoosh! A wave of demonic chi surged out from the bone spear. The roar of the bone dragon came from the depths of the demonic chi. Damn it! Dongfang Qionghao's heart tightened when he saw the Celestial take out the bone spear. He subconsciously looked at Shimin Jianzhong and the others. The 4 of them exchanged glances and shook their heads. Forget it. Dongfang Qionghuo gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, today, I'm afraid that the Fortune Gate's reputation will be ruined. Our 4 great families will be humiliated. Nangong Tianji's mouth was filled with bitterness. He looked at Xiao Hua, who was flying over proudly, and remained silent for a long time. The Nangong family was about to lose more than the other 3 great families. Not necessarily. Baiming Choqing was unwilling to give up. Our goal is not to fight. Today, we only need to capture the Literature Palace Master, and it will be a complete victory. That's right. Shimin Jianzhong gritted his teeth and said, exchanging 900,000 disciples for the 5 Qis unification technique is worth it. Good. Dongfang Qionghuo also made a decision in his heart. He waved his hand and said, since that's the case, we will act according to the plan. Don't let Gaochen see any flaws. Xiao Hua, Wen Chu, Lightning Taoist, and the Celestial had already met up with Dongfang Qionghuo, Shimin Jianzhong, Nangong Tianji, and Baiming Choqing. The abyss between the dawn and dusk cliff was different from the 2 sides of the dawn and dusk cliff. The void overlapped and compressed together like soft straw. Strands of black and white clouds with the aura of the stars and moon wandered freely in this unstable space. The wind in the sky was more biting cold than ordinary space. Wherever the wind blades landed, even the rocks would be cut open. Xiao Hua and the others' divine senses were not obstructed at this high altitude. When their divine senses swept through the space, they could even create layers of ripples. More than 20 supreme cultivators of hidden immortal continent had already spread out, standing high up in the sky. Their expressions were like water. Sounds of fighting, screams, and the sound of magical treasures and imperial tools colliding with each other faintly came from under everyone's feet. Kill. It seemed that they had already said too much. At this point, both sides no longer had any extra words to say. Xiao Hua and Dongfang Qionghao's gazes met, and sparks seemed to appear in the air. The 2 of them roared in unison and flew out. However, Dongfang Qionghuo glanced at Xiao Hua coldly. His figure flashed, and in a flash, he passed by Xiao Hua and pounced on Wen Chu. In the eyes of the arrogant Dongfang Qionghuo, only the master of the Wen Chu Palace was his real opponent. As for Xiao Hua, he could only leave it to Nangong Tianji. Nangong Tianji, who had been planning for a long time, could finally face Xiao Hua, who was about to trample on his sect's face. His eyes were already red. Xiao Hua sneered. Why would he care who his opponent was? Since the Nangong family had delivered themselves to his door, he was also overjoyed. Lightning flashed around Xiao Hua's body as he used the Heavenly Laws embodiment technique. His golden body, which was several thousand feet tall, was formed. He immediately clenched his right fist and smashed it towards Nangong Tianji. Nangong Tianji didn't show any signs of weakness. When he saw Xiao Hua activating his avatar, he also opened his mouth. Roar! Dozens of vast chi pillars fell from the sky and smashed onto his body. Nangong Tianji also activated his avatar and chased after Xiao Hua. The few Wen saints behind Nangong Tianji were also arrogant. They activated their avatar and surrounded Xiao Hua. Then, they waved their fists and legs and pounced on Xiao Hua. Boom! Xiao Hua's fist collided with Nangong Tianji's fist. A huge shockwave surged out. Xiao Hua staggered under the force of Nangong Tianji's fist. He seemed to have lost his balance. The few Wen saints who were pouncing on Xiao Hua actually swayed slightly. However, the multicolored light around them flickered. They received the impact and attacked Xiao Hua's back. Bang, bang, bang. Although Xiao Hua was in a sorry state, he still tried his best to raise his leg. With a flash of golden light, an illusory figure appeared like a wave and kicked the bodies of the Wen saints. When the Wen saints saw that Xiao Hua's fists and legs were not a match for Nangong Tianji, they sneered in their hearts. They waved their fists and legs towards Xiao Hua. Bang, bang, bang. Several gusts of wind rose again. Xiao Hua's golden body was sent flying in the air by the two Wen saints. However, the two Wen saints' avatars did not have any special changes. Following Xiao Hua's retreat, the other Wen saints had already arrived. Their fists landed on Xiao Hua's back. With a flash of golden light on Xiao Hua's back, a powerful rebounding force rushed out. The two Wen saints actually staggered. However, the radiance on Xiao Hua's back did not even dim in the slightest. Seeing that Xiao Hua's fists and legs were ordinary, but his golden body was indeed extremely powerful, Nangong Tianji sucked in a breath of cold air. He knew that he might not be able to gain the upper hand in a physical fight. Thus, he raised his hand and slapped his own head. Boom! A mottled five-colored true chi surged out. Similarly, the Wen saints did not dare to fight Xiao Hua head-on. They also raised their hands and slapped their own heads. Several streams of four-colored true chi gushed out and transformed into several large hands that fell down. Oh my! The four great families indeed live up to their reputation. Although Nangong Tianji's five-colored large hands were somewhat impure, the large hands that were formed were as hard as jade. They were even more powerful than Wen Chu's five-colored large hands. Xiao Hua could not help but praise this true chi transformation technique. I'm afraid that there are very few people in the world who can compare to it. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Thank you for all your support. Chapter 46:17. Several large hands fell down, tearing the void apart. The power of space firmly confined Xiao Hua within a few dozen miles. Not to mention escaping, even the wind had to stop. This spatial energy was completely controlled by the Nangong families Wen sages and Wen Chu, who were at the 9th grade of essence energy. Good, watch this Zhao's move. Xiao Hua was not afraid at all. He roared and slapped his head. Boom, boom, boom. Several thunderous roars rang out, and lightning spewed out like a tidal wave. It condensed into a giant lightning hand in the air and grabbed at the five-colored giant hands. Kacha, swoosh. Under Xiao Hua's thunderous giant hand, the Nangong family's giant hands all stopped. The true energy and inscriptions that were previously flowing like flood dragons were now as stiff as dead snakes. No matter how hard Nangong Tianji and the others tried to activate them, they still couldn't do as they wished. A kind of deathly aura that was like autumn frost directly passed through the giant hands and spread towards everyone's bodies. Damn it! Nangong Tianji roared. He opened his mouth, and a mouthful of true chi fell into the giant hands. At the same time, several Wen saints followed suit and spat out their true chi. As their true chi fell into the giant hands expanded and clashed with Xiao Hua's lightning hand. The lightning was like a flood dragon, crazily pouncing on the giant hands, while the true chi was like a dragon, fiercely counterattacking. The battle between the Nangong families Wen Chu had already affected the surrounding several hundred li. When Xiao Hua and Nangong Tianji made their move, they had already flown up carefully, trying their best not to affect the disciples under them. However, the spatial storm still came crashing down like waves, and thousands of disciples were swept into it. Whether it was the capital Heavenly Star Formation or the Nangong family's battle formation, they were all messed up. Some disciples were even accidentally thrown into the abyss. The Fortune Gates disciples were better off. After all, some of them had experienced the battle between humans and devils, and they often used some methods to train their disciples. These methods were all stored in the Fortune Gates training grounds on the Shenhua continent. Of course, these training grounds were built by the Lightning Taoist himself. On the Shenhua continent, the Lightning Taoist and Jade Archive Xiaohua were close to gods. They could do a lot for the Fortune Gates disciples, and many of them were close to the laws of heaven and earth. Therefore, the Fortune Gates method of training disciples was far superior to the four big families. This was also the reason why the Shenhua continent was able to produce an unstoppable army. What's more, the disciples that the four great clans brought out were mostly their hidden strength. Not to mention that there weren't many soldiers in the hidden immortal continent. There were very few large-scale battles. These disciples themselves had even less experience in battles. This battle highlighted one of the Fortune Gates disciples' strengths, and that was their ability to survive in a battle between two extremely powerful masters. The Fortune Gates disciples split into groups of 3 to 5, supporting each other as they tried to escape from the storm's range. Even if they couldn't escape, they remained calm, waiting for an opportunity to escape as their bodies plummeted to the ground. There were even some who were even bolder and actually used the spatial storm to attack the disciples of the four great clans. It was just this little bit of experience and training. After the spatial storm, the disciples of the four great clans had already lost quite a few. Nangong Tianji and the others naturally didn't care about the lives of the disciples within several hundred li of them. Not only did the five-colored giant hand tear the space apart, even the faintly discernible earth, fire, wind, lightning, and other auras in the sky were torn apart. It was as if the sky was collapsing, and the entire space smashed towards Xiaohua. Looking at Xiaohua's lightning giant hand, the 5 fingers were already different in color, and the entire hand was filled with lightning. Although it wasn't as condensed as Nangong Tianji's 5-colored giant hand, it was superior in terms of the purity of the lightning, and the momentum of the lightning was terrifying. Seeing the lightning hand wave, the space between Xiaohua and the hand was immediately sucked dry. Countless hurricanes and indescribable fluctuations rushed out from the torn space, violently pouncing towards Xiaohua. This storm, which could instantly kill an ordinary cultivator, fell on Xiaohua's golden body, but it only set off some ripples of golden light. Boom, boom, boom. The thunderous hand clashed with several 5-colored hands, and a destructive aura that was even more powerful than the collapse of the heavens and the earth rose from the sky. The thunderous hand was shattered, and countless thunderbolts flew in all directions, smashing into the void and shattering it. The 5-colored hands were also torn apart, and the translucent jade-like hands turned into countless fragments. Countless fragments also turned into fragmented aura and disappeared into the void. Violent gales rose, and the storm rolled. Within 1,000 li, the wind and clouds surged. Even someone as strong as Nangong Tianji staggered, and the protective light around his body was also blown away like a candle in the wind. With Nangong Tianji in such a state, those 9th-grade essence energy literary saints were even more embarrassed. Their bodies lost their balance, and they quickly rushed out of the storm. These literary saints were also shocked. Just a casual clash of divine abilities could cause such a huge commotion, and Xiaohua actually didn't fall into a disadvantageous position even when fighting against so many of them. This was something they really didn't expect. However, in this world, there were only more surprises, but no more surprises. Just as they were about to get out of the range of the storm, suddenly, a light figure rushed out from the lightning fragments. Xiaohua's tall and thin figure actually went against the wind, and with the help of the wind, he instantly appeared in front of them. What is this guy doing? The cultivation method of the literary saints of Confucianism was different from that of the Taoism cultivators. They had always emphasized practicing. Moreover, the true 5 Qis unification technique was to refine the 5 viscera and 6 bowels. The cultivation methods of the 4 major families were incomplete, but there were more or less traces of the true cultivation methods. Therefore, most of the disciples of the 4 major families would refine their bodies while refining their qi. When these literary saints saw Xiao Hua suddenly appear, they were surprised, but they weren't particularly afraid. In fact, they were even a little confused. After all, they believed that the cultivation of their physical bodies was definitely stronger than that of the Taoism cultivators of the same level. Moreover, Xiao Hua didn't gain any advantage when he was surrounded by so many people. Instead, he seemed to be losing. Seeing Xiao Hua's figure appear, he waved his fist, and like several phantoms, he landed on several literary saints. These literary saints' hearts were filled with disdain, and the same thought emerged from the bottom of their hearts. Damn it! My divine abilities may not be as powerful as a human Mahayana stage cultivator, but didn't we already see the power of my fists and feet? It's just that I'm a little stronger and my skin is thicker. Therefore, while these literary saints were on guard against Xiao Hua's backup plan, they also slacked off and swung their fists and legs to meet the enemy. There was even a literary saint who actually used the eye-clearing technique to test the strength of this punch. In the distance, Nangong Tianji also ignored Xiao Hua's sudden intrusion, and a mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Amidst the fierce wind, his figure strangely flashed with multicolored light, turning into a distorted light shadow, and rushed behind Xiao Hua like lightning, preparing to gang up on Xiao Hua with the other literary saints. As expected, Xiao Hua's fist collided with the fist of one of the literary saints. Boom! A sound that wasn't very loud rang out. When Shang, who had a smile on his face, suddenly had a change in expression the instant his fist came into contact with Xiao Hua's fist. This was because he saw that Xiao Hua's fist had suddenly shrunk, and a black halo of light had unexpectedly appeared in the air. Not good. When Shang, who was proficient in body cultivation, immediately sensed that something was wrong from the force of the fist coming into contact with Xiao Hua's fist, and an unavoidable feeling arose spontaneously. However, before he could open his mouth to warn the others, Xiao Hua's fist had already landed. The sound of the explosion wasn't loud, but the power was extremely great. Nangong Tianji and the others could see that the literary saint's sub-body, starting from the fist, followed by his arm, all the way until half of his sub-body collapsed with a loud bang, and countless inscriptions were annihilated in the collapse. In this collapse, the noble qi turned into a vortex, and pieces of flesh and blood burst out at the same time. On the side of the collapsed sub-body and physical body of the literary saint, more than 10 layers of space appeared, and the flesh and blood of the literary saint were swallowed by the void, and could no longer be recovered. Damn it! Seeing the power of Xiao Hua's fist, Nangong Tianji cursed inwardly. He realized that Xiao Hua's previous move was just a tactic to lure the enemy. He hurriedly sped up and sent out a palm strike, wanting to attract Xiao Hua's attention. Unfortunately, just as Nangong Tianji came to his senses, Xiao Hua's fist wind pounced towards the other literary saint. That literary saint had long been scared witless after seeing the power of Xiao Hua's fist. He didn't dare to take Xiao Hua's fist head-on, and tried to move his body to dodge. It was also at this moment, woo, the sound of the wind rose again, and under the body of the literary saint, Xiao Hua's leg stretched out from the void, and kicked the waist of the literary saint. The strength of a leg has always surpassed the wind of a fist. When Xiao Hua's leg landed, the sub-body of the literary saint collapsed bit by bit, and an oval-shaped black hole fell into the body of the literary saint. The literary saint screamed miserably, and a bloody light appeared at the collapsed area again. His sub-body rapidly shrank, and his physical body was almost cut in half. At the same time that Xiao Hua succeeded in killing the second literary saint, Nangong Tianji's palm also arrived. Contrary to Nangong Tianji's expectations, Xiao Hua didn't dodge at all. Seeing Xiao Hua so confident, Nangong Tianji suddenly thought of the situation when Xiao Hua was hit by the 2 literary saints, and he couldn't help but feel that things were not good. Pa! Another loud sound rang out. Nangong Tianji's palm was indeed accumulating strength. If a mountain was here, it would probably be pushed down by his palm. Xiaohua wasn't a mountain, and naturally, he couldn't block Nangong Tianji's palm. However, Xiaohua's golden body was sent flying by Nangong Tianji's palm. Xiaohua's golden body instantly collapsed, and the golden light was quickly extinguished. Xiaohua's figure actually pounced on the third literary saint. How could Nangong Tianji not know Xiaohua's plan? The tricks that ordinary martial artists often used in the competition were actually used by the Taoist sect's Grand Ascension stage cultivators in this supreme battle. This was not only beyond Nangong Tianji's expectations, but it was also out of Nangong Tianji's expectations. Nangong Tianji couldn't help but gnash his teeth and say, "Damn it, borrowing strength to fight strength." P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Thank you for all your support. Chapter 46:18. Of course, Nangong Tianji's curiosity was piqued. After all, he knew the strength of his palm. Even if immortal Emperor Go-Chun was here, he wouldn't dare to let his palm land on his body, unless it was the 7 great sages from the Great Sage Hall. At the thought of this, Nangong Tianji suddenly realized something and shouted, "Pingo, retreat. This bastard's body is extremely strong. Don't." Nangong Tianji originally wanted to say, "Don't let him get close," but he was only halfway through when Xiaohua had already forced himself to the side of the literature sage named Nangong Pingo. This literature sage, who had just used the clear eyes technique to probe the strength of Xiaohua's fist, had only blocked Xiaohua's left fist, and was immediately hit in the shoulder by Xiaohua's right fist. Boom! Another muffled sound rang out. Nangong Pingu's subbody began to collapse from the shoulder. In an instant, the subbody was shattered, and even the body below the subbody was affected. Blood and flesh flew everywhere. However, Nangong Pingu, who was about to faint from the pain, stared at Xiaohua, who was soaring into the sky. His eyes were filled with confusion. This was because he could clearly see that the fist that was about to strike his heart had swerved slightly and was now aiming for his shoulder. The fact that he hadn't been killed on the spot wasn't because he was lucky, nor was it because he had managed to evade in time. Instead, it was because this Grand Ascension stage Taoist was holding back. Seeing the 3 ninth grade sage of origin energy being killed or injured by Xiaohua in just a few rounds, Nangong Tianji's heart ached as if it was being stabbed by a knife. He knew very well in his heart which of those Confucian cultivators who were able to cultivate to the 9th grade of origin energy did not possess supreme skills. Although these Great Sage Halls, Great Sage Halls, Great Sage Hall, were not Great Sage Halls, Great Sage Halls, Great Sage Hall, even if they were facing immortal Emperor Go-Chun, they wouldn't be injured in just a few rounds. This was also the reason why he, as the patriarch of the 4 great clans, was not worried about letting these 9th grade Great Sage Halls, Great Sage Hall fight. However, Nangong Tianji didn't expect Xiaohua's Great Sage Hall's Great Sage Hall to be able to flatten a mountain with a single punch. As a result, these 3 9th grade literary saints were killed and injured by Xiaohua before they could even use the true divine arts of the Confucian cultivators. This purely physical injury was even more severe than Taoist magic power. Even though Xiaohua didn't take Nangong Pingu's life today, it would be difficult for this 9th grade Essence Force literary sage to advance his cultivation in the future. Even one's lifespan would be affected. Xiaohua, this old man will not rest until you die. Nangong Tianji's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He roared as he raised his hand and slapped the top of his head again. Rumbling sounds could be heard from Nangong Tianji's body. Ripples of space surged out from his body. Sharp, bird-like whistling sounds could be heard from the top of his head. Xiaohua originally wanted to continue chasing after the 2 remaining saints of literature, but when he saw the white hair of the 2 saints of literature running away and Nangong Tianji challenging them, he stopped in the air and turned around coldly. He looked at the rapidly swaying earth, fire, wind, and thunder in the sky and laughed. "Won't stop until one of us dies? What a joke. Nangong Tianji, you're thinking too much. You don't have the qualifications to fight with me until one of us dies. When Nangong Tianji heard Xiaohua's words, even though he knew that Xiaohua was trying to provoke him, he was still so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Pooh! Nangong Tianji roared angrily. He opened his mouth again, and a five-colored pillar of air shot out from his mouth. It shot straight up into the sky and pierced into the earth, fire, wind, and thunder. Boom! The earth, fire, wind, and thunder let out a loud explosion. Countless wind and thunder fell into the five-colored pillar of light like a heavenly river bursting through a dam. At this moment, above Nangong Tiansun's head, a similar pillar of energy shot out. This pillar of energy wasn't five-colored, but golden. Hundreds of millions of inscriptions surged out like golden chrysanthemums, enveloping the surrounding several hundred miles. The golden chrysanthemums were like a vast river. Wherever the earth, fire, wind, and lightning fell, all of the golden chrysanthemums transformed. Under the cover of the river, the space was completely locked down. All of the noble energy and the world's origin energy melted away. Even within Xiaohua's divine sense, the five elements of heaven and earth began to change. Faint rays of light began to shoot out in all directions, swaying in all directions within the space. Nangong Tianji laughed sinisterly. He watched as Xiaohua's golden body was covered by countless tiny rays of light. It was as if he had fallen into a net. He shouted proudly, "Xiaohua, today this old man will let you see what the true Noble Qi River is." As Nangong Tianji's voice fell, the earth, fire, wind, and thunder in the sky turned into aurora magnetism through the golden chrysanthemum. Under the aurora magnetism, the space within 1,000 miles was filled with dazzling sparks. The entire space was filled with strange laws. Under this strange light, Xiaohua's face also revealed a strange smile. The righteous spirit river of Confucian cultivators had always been a divine ability that Xiaohua highly praised. Under the righteous spirit river, the righteous spirit would envelop the space, and any evil force would be destroyed by this righteous spirit. However, although Nangong Tianji's Noble Qi River was several times stronger than an ordinary Noble Qi River, even someone as strong as Xiaohua could feel the sharpness of the aurora magnetism. Xiaohua didn't doubt that if this river-like aurora magnetism fell, his golden body would definitely be riddled with holes. Even his nascent soul might not be able to escape the fate of being killed. It could be said that the Noble Qi River was the true nemesis of Taoism cultivators. Unfortunately, Nangong Tianji met Xiaohua. Seeing the smile on Xiaohua's face, which contained a thick sense of ridicule, Nangong Tianji's heart thumped. He couldn't help but look into the distance. Just as Nangong Tianji felt that something was wrong, Xiaohua opened his mouth. Pooh! With a sound, the spirit-slaying sword gourd spat out from his mouth. Xiaohua raised his hand and pointed, and a thick crystal light fell into the sword gourd. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The sword gourd vibrated, and the spirit-slaying sword gourd soared into the sky. When the river-like aurora magnetism came into contact with the spirit-slaying sword gourd, it immediately seemed as if it had seen a long-lost relative. It rushed in without a care for its own safety and had long forgotten Nangong Tianji's hospitality. This is. Nangong Tianji didn't expect that Xiaohua would be able to destroy the noble spirit river that he was so proud of with just a single magical treasure. Furthermore, the vast and mighty aurora magnetism didn't listen to his command at all. It gathered into two thick beams of light and went against the current, pouncing towards him like a huge dragon. Damn it! Nangong Tianji was shocked. The chrysanthemum and snowflakes above his head immediately retracted and turned into a golden chrysanthemum cloud to protect him. Roar! At this moment, Dongfang Qionghao's roar sounded in the distant sky. Nangong Tianji was overjoyed. His figure flashed, and he teleported towards that direction. "Wanna leave?" Xiaohua sneered. He waved his right hand again, and a ray of golden light flashed in the sky like a pair of scissors. It immediately slashed across Dongfang Qionghao's illusory figure. Swoosh! The illusory figure that had already turned into a distorted light was actually cut off by the soaring dragon scissors. The right leg of the illusory figure was cut off. Boom boom. The moment the right leg left the illusory figure, it immediately collapsed, and it turned into noble chi and runes that scattered in the sky. Roar. Nangong Tianji howled in grief, but he didn't stop. He continued to rush into the distance as if he had planned this beforehand. Humph! Xiao Hua snorted coldly. He raised his head and looked at the spirit-slaying sword gourd circling above his head. He then lowered his head and sneered, "Since you want to destroy my fortune gate, then don't blame me for being merciless. Go." As Xiao Hua raised his hand and pointed, two thick rays of spirit-slaying sword gourd turned into hundreds of thousands of light threads and crazily rained down. Countless miserable screams rang out from the sea of clouds. Each ray of light penetrated the body of an aristocratic family's disciple and directly pierced their dantian. Xiaohua wouldn't take their lives, but whether they could stay alive or not, that would depend on their own fortune. Just as Xiaohua was about to withdraw the spirit-slaying sword gourd, he heard a clear light in the distance, and another strange phenomenon appeared. Back to Xiaohua's battle against the Nangong family. The heaven expert flew out with his bone spear, but he was also blocked by Shimin Jianzhong and several ninth-grade essence force saints. Hiss! The heaven expert swung his bone spear and raised his head to look into the distance. He roared, "Shimin Jianzhong, you are not my opponent. Hurry up and get out of my way. I want to meet Dongfang Qiong Hao." Hee. Shimin Jianzhong sneered, and a cold light appeared around him. He said, "Your opponent is this old man. Wen Chu is Dongfang Qiong Hao's opponent. Of course, if you can defeat this old man, then you can go find Dongfang Qiong Hao. However, this old man wants to see the origin of a Taoist cultivator who can fight evenly with the master of the Jade Pure Palace." After saying that, Shimin Jianzhong didn't hesitate. Inscriptions flickered all over his body, and clouds surged out. Thick, awe-inspiring chi penetrated through the fragile void and fell on his body. Boom, boom, boom. Shimin Jianzhong's body trembled, and layers of sword light bloomed like flowers. Every layer of sword light was accompanied by a sword intent. It was either life and death, or austere, or bloody. This sword intent enveloped an area of several hundred li in just a moment. As this sword intent surged out, the bodies of the several saints of literature also glowed with sword light. Not to mention that their limbs were as sharp as flying swords. Even the gaze in their eyes was like a sword. Haha, so it's a sword cultivator. The heaven expert laughed and shouted, "It's not like this old man hasn't fought with sword cultivators before. Come, 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 fight with this old man for 300 rounds. As he spoke, the heaven expert's body swayed, and the blood light on the bone spear surged. A pitch-black demonic dragon emerged from the bone spear, roaring and pouncing toward Shimin Jianzhong. The awe-inspiring chi of the Confucian cultivators had always been the natural nemesis of the Devil Clan, but correspondingly, the Devil Chi and the awe-inspiring chi had been rivals since ancient times. Although Shimin Jianzhong activated his sword intent, the demonic dragon's bloody, murderous, and violent intent rushed into Shimin Jianzhong's defense and went straight into his heart. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it. Give it a reward, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 46:19. Seeing that the celestial was so powerful, Shimin Jianzhong was also shocked. He thought to himself, "Damn it, how can this Taoist body cultivator have a demonic weapon?" When he fought with the master of the Jade Pure Palace that day, he didn't use a weapon. Moreover, this demonic weapon is different from ordinary demonic weapons. The bone dragon that was refined into a demonic spear is not an ordinary dragon. The aura of this demonic weapon seems to be innately restraining the righteous aura of my Confucian cultivator. Today's battle seems to be too dangerous, far from what I expected. However, since he was already here, how could Shimin Jianzhong hesitate? He slowly raised his right hand, and a sword light appeared in his right palm like starlight. Then, countless sword cries came from the sword light, and a sword that was overflowing with brilliance began to expand rapidly. This old man will show you what the sword essence of heaven and earth is. Shimin Jianzhong roared proudly, and the huge sword that was 1,000 feet long fell like a falling mountain. The sword hair of the huge sword was like a flood dragon, and the sword essence was like a rainbow. Wherever it passed, the space was split open, the wind was split open, and even the eyes of the celestial were about to be split open. Near Shimin Jianzhong, the literary saints didn't dare to be careless. They opened their mouths at the same time, and a flying sword that looked like a hook rushed out and landed on the arm of the celestial. Wherever the sword light passed, the entire arm turned into a hook. Several people cooperated with Shimin Jianzhong, and as their bodies swayed, the hooks were like snow, attacking different parts of the celestial. Boom! In the roar, the bone spear pierced the sword light, and the sword light also split the demonic aura of the bone spear. Shimin Jianzhong was indeed the master of the Shimin family. Wherever the sword essence of heaven and earth fell, the demonic aura was split open, and the demons hidden in the demonic aura were all split in half. In the bloody light, the body of the bone spear was revealed, and a shallow notch appeared on the scales of the bone dragon's back. The gigantic sword formed by Shimin Jianzhong's sword beam was also swallowed by the bone dragon after it slashed down. Ka. With a crisp sound, the entire gigantic sword was shattered into pieces by the demonic light. Although each fragment struggled to transform into tens of thousands of small flying swords before the flying swords could take form, they were shaken into inscriptions by the bone spear and scattered into the void. Ka. At the same time, several sounds of metal and stone rang out. Several sword shadows flashed past the celestial's back, waist, and ribs, and a series of golden lights splashed out. Ow. The celestial seemed to be in pain and roared in the air. Haha, that's all there is to it. Shimin Jianzhong looked up to the sky and laughed, saying, "This old man thought you were very powerful, but it seems that you are just a guy who is strong in appearance but weak in reality. Maybe you have succeeded in refining your body, but in this old man's eyes, your body cultivation is just like grass." As he spoke, Shimin Jianzhong raised his hand and waved it from his waist. A thin blue light flashed, and a slender sword like an orchid appeared. Although the sword light was thin, it was very tough. When it landed in the void, it pierced through the void. What was special was that the sword was very soft, and it was like duckweed in the wind. It danced with the wind, and a sense of elegance and nobility spontaneously appeared. Shimin Jianzhong stared at the sword, and his eyes revealed eagerness, as if he had seen his long-lost lover. For a moment, Shimin Jianzhong raised his head and looked at the celestial who was also vigilant in his eyes. He said proudly, "The Confucian scholars of the hidden immortal continent have long admired the gentle sword, but no one has ever heard of the feather orchid immortal sword of my Shimin family. Before the feather orchid immortal sword, the so-called number 1 imperial weapon is nothing but nothingness. All the families in the world know about the Son of Heaven's sword, and with the Son of Heaven's sword, you can stabilize the world. But who knows? If you control the feather orchid sword, you can become an immortal. You are very lucky to be able to see the true appearance of the feather orchid immortal sword before you die." After speaking, Shimin Jianzhong raised his hand and waved. That sword, which was originally as soft as gossamer, suddenly gave birth to a resplendent sword light. Moreover, that sword directly soared into the sky, and an extraordinary sword intent rushed out from the sword. Wherever the sword intent passed, the broken void transformed into many orchids. Each orchid was born from the sword's splendor, and each orchid revealed a hazy world. Each orchid contained a heaven-destroying and earth-exterminating killing intent. Damn it! When the celestial saw it, he couldn't help but turn pale with fright. The celestial was formed by Xiaohua's bone tempering. When it comes to the corporeal body, it is naturally tough and tenacious. It is very difficult for ordinary magic tools to injure him. Normally, the celestial should be the most powerful one among Xiaohua's clones, but in fact, the celestial was the most awkward one. Previously, other than cultivating Xiaohua's Big Dipper Fist and several bone-tempering cultivation techniques, he didn't have any other cultivation techniques. Then, in Star Moon Palace, Xiaohua found a cultivation technique for the celestial and also found a secret technique to repair the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper. However, the time was short and the celestial didn't complete it. Therefore, when facing ordinary cultivators of the lower ninth grade, the celestial had an absolute advantage. He could even deal with them more efficiently than Xiaohua. However, when facing Shimin Jianzhong, who was also at the upper ninth grade, he was powerless. Seeing Shimin Jianzhong take out the Feather Orchid Immortal Sword, that bone-chilling sword light made his heart palpitate. Without hesitation, he waved his hand and summoned the Celestial's white bone. When the Celestial's white bone appeared, the space immediately began to flash with a pitch-black halo. A kind of rich, desolate aura rushed out from the white bone. When the Celestial merged with the white bone, with a loud bang, the space within 100 miles began to tremble. Waves of energy wantonly swept out and merged with the desolate aura. Ayo! The Celestial looked up to the sky and roared. A fierce aura emerged from his 3 heads. Waves of sound surged towards Shimin Jianzhong and the others. This is the ancient demon clan? Seeing that the Celestial had 3 heads and 6 arms and emitted a ferocious aura that could suppress the world, Shimin Jianzhong was astonished. He finally understood why the Celestial could fight evenly with the Jade Pure Palace Master. However, in the blink of an eye, Shimin Jianzhong sneered. Suddenly, tens of thousands of sword hairs appeared around his body. These sword hairs all rushed into the treasured sword in his hand. The slender treasured sword overflowed with brilliance like the rising sun. As Shimin Jianzhong waved his hands, the seemingly slender treasured sword fell down like a meteor. Amidst the huge rumbling sound, the space habitually shattered and collapsed. The orchid sword hairs from before floated down and pounced on the Celestial. The treasured sword was still far from the Celestial. In the sky above the Celestial's head, pop! Sounds of explosions suddenly sounded. Countless mighty pillars of qi were extinguished, and thumb-sized protrusions appeared around the Celestial. Looking at the other 4 sides of the sword light, the figures of the several saints of literature had already turned into swords and flew up like orchids. The sword intent that was several times stronger than before also pierced through the void and fell toward the back of the celestial being. The demon-devouring spear is invincible. Kill Buddha if it meets Buddha. Slay immortals if it meets immortals. The celestial laughed boldly. You are just immortal ascension swords. How can you be a match for me? Roar. The celestial opened his mouth and 3 pillars of light rushed out, passing through the sword qi and landing on Shimin Jianzhong's head. The bone spear in his hand, under the stimulation of the desolate qi, turned into a demon dragon that was thousands of feet long and crazily expanded to meet the treasured swords. The sage of literature didn't even have time to scream before the brilliance of his secondary body was instantly extinguished, and he fell from the sky. Poof! The celestial being succeeded, but Shimin Jianzhong's Feather Orchid Immortal Ascension sword also arrived at the same time. This sword that was even thinner than a thin thread easily pierced the celestial's heart and almost came out of his body. Good. The sage of literature couldn't help but cheer when he saw the celestial being stabbed. At this time, boom boom, behind the sage of literature, a violent wind suddenly rose. The celestial's hands that were holding the spear had unknowingly abandoned it and were now reaching out from the void and grabbing the backs of 2 sage of literatures. The 2 bloody hands even came out from the chests of 2 sage of literatures. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you for all forms of support. She stood in the air and said coldly, since that's the case, then please raise your brush and correct it. I hope you don't talk too big, or your teeth will fall out. Hee. In the Thunderbolt Immortal's hand, clusters of lightning slowly emerged. He still had a smile on his face as he replied, although this old man doesn't have Taoist sorcerer's brush and can't use the wondrous blossom brush, it's more than enough to correct your vulgarity. As for my teeth, please don't worry. This old man's age hasn't reached the point where my teeth will fall out, so we can't be mentioned in the same breath. After saying that, The Thunderbolt Immortal waved his hands, and tens of thousands of thunderbolts appeared out of thin air, transforming into the shapes of brushes, and pointed towards the plum blossoms in the air at the same time. This thunderbolt was like a huge wave overturning the sky, overturning the entire space, and its momentum was incomparably vast. However, all the thunderbolts had only rushed out 100 feet when the countless plum blossoms in the air suddenly produced indescribable fluctuations. These fluctuations were like a net, intertwining and falling. Wherever the fluctuations passed, all the thunderbolts immediately ceased to exist, turning into nothingness. So much so that when the fluctuations landed on the Thunderbolt Immortal's body, even the lightning flashing around the Thunderbolt Immortal's body was also smoothed out. The Thunderbolt Immortal was dumbstruck. Looking at those plum blossoms, they were like Baiming Cui Qing's small eyes that were mocking him. Ha ha ha. Baiming Cui Qing laughed wildly. It's just the Tao sect's Thunderbolt technique. What's there to be arrogant about? Didn't you want to correct this old man's winter plum forbidden lightning diagram? Why don't you pick up your lightning brush? Without it, I'm afraid your teeth will fall out. Damn it. The Thunderbolt Immortal was ashamed and angry. He raised his hand and slapped the top of his head. Rumble. A cluster of lightning spurted out, transforming into a thunderbolt technique that grabbed towards Baiming Cui Qing. Unfortunately, as soon as the lightning appeared, the fluctuations rose again. That thunderbolt technique whimpered as it shrank and disappeared, not causing any waves at all. Since you don't have the strength to lift the brush, then let this old man do it. Baiming Cui Qing was in high spirits. She opened her mouth and a mouthful of life's true energy gushed out, transforming into countless fine threads that were similar to inscription chains. At the same time, they entered the void and connected all the plum blossoms together. Fall. When Baiming Cui Qing shouted, a huge azure inscription was spurted out from her mouth, falling in midair and exploding with a loud bang. Tens of thousands of plum blossoms spiraled and flashed, gushing over from all directions. That indescribable fluctuation transformed into an invisible lotus shape, trapping the Thunderbolt Immortal. As soon as the lotus shape was formed, the Thunderbolt Immortal could not perceive the situation outside the space. He only felt a cluster of misty green halos covering the area around him. He could not use his divine thoughts. The chi of heaven and earth was isolated, and even the void was imprisoned. Not good. The Thunderbolt Immortal was shocked and hurriedly wanted to urge the sound of thunder. However, just as he was about to urge his magic power, he suddenly frowned again. That's not right. The Thunderbolt Immortal narrowed his eyes and looked at the illusory green light around him. He thought to himself, the Baiming family is one of the 4 great families of Confucian cultivators. How can there be the aura of Taoist magic in his green light? Although this aura is very subtle, I was born to report Taoism. How can I not detect it? It's really weird. Just as the Thunderbolt Immortal was puzzled, the fluctuating aura became more and more intense, and a destructive momentum surged in the entire space. Haha. After being surprised, the Thunderbolt Immortal laughed out loud. He raised his hand and made a rare hand seal. He said, although this old man is called the Thunderbolt Immortal and the Thunderbolt technique is naturally this old man's strongest technique, don't you think you're being too delusional if you want to imprison this old man with merely the winter plum forbidden lightning diagram? Immediately, the Thunderbolt Immortal made a gesture, and a bean-sized lamp appeared in midair. This lamp was divided into 6 colors, which was exactly the same as Xiao Hua's 6-colored spiritual fire. Old man Baiming, you fat toad at the bottom of a well. Today, I'll let you see the power of my Taoist magic. The Thunderbolt Immortal shouted, break. Following the Thunderbolt Immortal's finger, a thick crystal light fell into the lamp. The 6-colored spiritual fire instantly turned into a several zhang large fire pillar and directly penetrated the Thunderbolt Immortal's feet. The spiritual fire was the absolute weapon that Xiao Hua used before he reached the nascent soul stage. Once the spiritual fire was used, it was invincible. However, because the spiritual fire consumed too much magic power, Xiao Hua would never use it unless he had no other choice. When Xiao Hua reached the 9th grade of origin energy, There were too many methods that he could use. Therefore, although the spiritual fire had already become six-colored, Xiaohua basically didn't use it anymore. The Thunderbolt Immortal naturally knew the power of the six-colored spiritual fire. While he was cultivating the Thunderbolt technique, he was also pondering how to refine the six-colored spiritual fire. The incantation that he was using now was a spell that used the six-colored spiritual fire as the seed and his own magic power as the supplement. This spell was purely of the fire attribute and didn't consume much magic power. Normally, the Thunderbolt Immortal didn't have the opportunity to use this spell. Since he was forced to this place by Baiming Chu Qing, he just happened to witness the power of this fire attribute spell. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 46:21. Puff. A muffled sound that wasn't particularly loud rang out. The place where the fire pillar landed, the misty blue illusion was pierced through. Under the fire pillar, the hundreds of plum blossom clouds vanished. The forbidden thunder diagram of the winter plum blossom had been easily destroyed by the Thunder Immortal. What kind of fire is this? Baiming Choqing looked at the fire pillar in a daze and cried out, "How can an ordinary fire break my green lotus?" At this point, Baiming Choqing's expression changed greatly. He hurriedly raised his hand and grabbed. A huge hand of several miles in size fell from the sky. He shouted angrily, "Damn it! How can you bully the weak like this?" Seeing that the fire pillar had broken through the imprisonment, the Thunderbolt Immortal's figure swayed and immediately landed at the flaw. He reached his hand into the fire pillar. Then, without hesitation, the Thunderbolt Immortal flipped his hands and several fire spears separated from the fire pillar. Woo! The Thunderbolt Immortal raised his hand again. Several fire spears fell into the void and disappeared in a flash. Almost at the same time, several plum blossoms disappeared where the fire spears landed. Miserable shrieks rang out in the air as several literary saints appeared in the void. Each of them had a fire spear stabbed into their chest. Although the fire spears were not enough to kill the literary saints on the spot, the six-colored spiritual fire ignited their true qi and bodies. Even the surrounding void was about to be ignited. Haha, the Thunderbolt Immortal laughed. "I'll send these eyesores back to their hometown first. Then I'll tell you what elegance is." Huff. At this time, Baiming Choqing's huge hand fell. Where the true qi fell, the six-colored spiritual fire did not extinguish. Instead, it went against the flow and ignited Baiming Choqing's huge hand. Damn it! Baiming Choqing was shocked. She cursed and decisively cut her wrist. With a swoosh, she threw the huge hand away. Just as Baiming Choqing was about to use another magical power, Dongfang Qionghao's voice came from afar. Baiming Choqing glared at the Thunderbolt Immortal fiercely. Her figure turned into a plum blossom shadow and disappeared instantly. The Thunderbolt Immortal shouted disdainfully. She really has no manners. She escaped without even saying goodbye. Then, the Thunderbolt Immortal did not even look at the literary sages who were burned by the spiritual fire and chased after them. In order to avoid Baiming Choqing's winter plum forbidden lightning diagram, Dongfang Qionghao's figure flickered and lured Wen Chu to another high altitude. At this moment, Chao Mu Ya's heavenly light split in two, and the sky was once again covered in a faint greenish-gray. Layers of earth, fire, wind, and lightning roared in the sky, and the clouds that approached Chao Mu Ya were shattered into pieces. When Chu landed and looked at Dongfang Qiionghao, who was on guard in the distance, his eyes flashed with worry. He looked around and sighed. We Confucians have written many poems. Other than Immortals at the Magpie Bridge, this old man likes Song of Tomorrow the most. Then, when Chu didn't dare to look at Dongfang Qionghao's confusion, he started to recite, "Tomorrow comes after tomorrow. How many tomorrows are there? I am waiting for tomorrow, and all things are wasted. If the people of the world are tired by tomorrow, spring will pass and autumn will come, and the old will come." In the morning, he looked at the east flowing water. In the evening, he looked at the west setting sun. How much could tomorrow be in 100 years? Please listen to my song of tomorrow. When he finished reciting, Wen Chu continued, looking at Xiao Muya, this old man suddenly feels that time is passing quickly. Day after day, day after day, day after day, day after day. A day is but a blink of an eye. How much time is there in a person's life? Why do we not do meaningful things and only do boring things? Dongfang Qianghao naturally didn't know that Wen Chu's feelings had just been born, and he was looking at the world with his own ignorant eyes. However, when he saw that Wen Chu didn't make a move, he waved his hand, and the literary sages disappeared and landed in various places. The master of Wen Chu Palace is quite refined. Dongfang Qianghao smiled. Although this old man has never seen you before, I know that you are a refined person after seeing you today. You are completely different from that bastard Gaochen. However, to be honest, I, Jinzhong, and the others might not be any better than Gaochen. Perhaps we were like you in our early years, and we used to make tea with clear spring water and red mud to make wine. However, now that we are in your position, we have already treated our previous lives as our ideal. At this point, Dongfang Qianghao sighed. Actually, sometimes this old man also wants to be like you, to throw away these shackles, or to find a desolate mountain to cultivate in peace, or to find Gaochen to become the master of some palace and live a leisurely life. However, if this old man takes half a step back, others will take a step forward. My Dongfang family's thousands of years of foundation may become someone else's. This old man has taken over this heavy responsibility from my ancestors, and I can't slack off. My fate has already been decided when I took over the position of master. To be honest, this old man doesn't think that the four great families will win today's battle. Wen Chu retracted his gaze and looked at the disciples who were fighting beneath his feet. He said, "You don't know enlightened Master Zhao's background at all. Don't you think that it's not worth it to make both sides suffer for the 5 Qis unification art? There are some things that must be done. Even if the price is high, this old man will still do it." Dongfang Qianghao replied, "However, there are some things that cannot be done. Even if there is no price, this old man will not do them. The 5 Qis unification art is extremely important to our 4 clans. We must obtain it at all costs." Wen Chu sneered, "If this old man told you that you didn't need to do so much, you wouldn't need to set up such a trap. This old man already told you when I gave the 5 Qis unification art to immortal Emperor Gaochen. I'm returning it to the Confucian cultivators, not the immortal palaces. It won't be long before the 5 Qis unification art is made public on hidden immortal continent." Dongfang Qianghao was stunned and did not say anything for a long time. He stared at Wen Chu as if he was thinking about the validity of Wen Chu's words. However, Dongfang Qianghao spoke again. "I believe your words. However, I don't believe the Gaochen. Or rather, I don't believe that the Gaochen would give the 5 Qis unification art to our 4 clans and the 100 schools of philosophers for no reason. Moreover, I can tell you with certainty that if you don't make the 5 Qis unification art public, then your so-called return of the 5 Qis unification art to the Confucian cultivators is nothing more than a joke. You're only using the 5 Qis unification art to give yourself the title of Confucian Immortal Master, the master of the Literature Star Palace." Wen Chu shrugged helplessly. "This is all I can do. You can do even more." Dongfang Qianghao smiled. "You can give the 5 Qis unification art to our 4 clans and work together with us." Dongfang Qianghao hesitated for a moment before continuing. "I can even promise you that if possible, our 4 clans can recommend you to be the immortal emperor of the immortal palaces." Wen Chu knew that Dongfang Qianghao was trying to bewitch him. He shook his head. "How can I be the immortal emperor with my temperament? If I wanted to, why would I give the 5 Qis unification art to immortal Emperor Gaochen?" Dongfang Qianghao remained silent. Wen Chu pondered for a moment before continuing. "When I gave the 5 Qis unification art to immortal Emperor Gaochen, we had an agreement. That's why I can't give the 5 Qis unification art to the 4 clans. However, if the 4 clans agree, I'll discuss it with Taoist Master Xiao and come up with a foolproof plan." Although Wen Chu didn't say that Xiao Hua could give the 5 Qis unification technique to the 4 great families, Dongfang Qianghao knew from Dongfang Yushan that Xiaohua also knew the five-cheese unification technique, so he understood. However, Dongfang Qianghao rejected Wen Chu's offer and shook his head. There's no turning back now. Unless Taoist Master Xiao hands over the five-cheese unification art now. That's why. Wen Chu smiled wryly. Even if you know this is a mortal Emperor Gaoqian's plan, you still have to step in, yes. There are many things in this world that are beyond one's control. Dongfang Qianghao nodded. Just like now, I know you're a gentleman and want to befriend you, but I still have to think of a way to capture you. As he spoke, Dongfang Qianghao slapped the top of his head, and a large, crystal-clear, multicolored hand appeared out of thin air and grabbed at him. Wen Chu also unleashed a five-colored hand. Although the hand was not solid, its color was pure, and as it passed, Dongfang Qianghao's shackles were swept away. Wen Chu sighed. When it comes to Confucian techniques, you are no match for me. Boom! Wen Chu's hand clashed with Dongfang Qianghao's. Under the huge force, Dongfang Qianghao's hand crumbled into pieces of runes, while Wen Chu's hand was still there and quickly restored. Dongfang Qianghao wasn't surprised at all. He narrowed his eyes and said, "It's too early to talk about this." Sure enough, at the place where the five-colored hands landed, a green bamboo shoot appeared. Puff! Dongfang Qianghao's true qi flowed into the bamboo shoot, and it suddenly turned into a huge bamboo tree. It was green and glistening. This is... Wen Chu didn't understand. The hand that hadn't recovered reached out again. Woo! Wherever Wen Chu's large hand landed, the bamboo swiftly turned into a grayish-yellow color. Numerous pale yellow bamboo flowers slowly grew on them. Once these bamboo flowers were revealed, inscriptions suddenly appeared in the previously untraceable sky. These inscriptions faded under the pale yellow color of the bamboo flowers, transforming into numerous colorless bamboo flowers. A faint aura of death quickly spread around. Wen Chu raised an eyebrow. He seemed to understand something. Whoosh! Tens of thousands of colorless flowers suddenly bloomed, and Wen Chu's hand withered. All of his true qi flowed into the flowers. At the same time, the aura of death surged towards Wen Chu like a tidal wave. Wen Chu activated his true qi, and the five-colored light quickly faded under the aura of death. The inscriptions were wiped out by the aura of death. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Chidian. Vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you for all your support. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.